I just want to make TV and radio. It wasn't about the broadcast. It wasn't about the trappings. It wasn't about what it was. I just wanted to be part of that world because I love that world. And so I was prepared to do anything to be part of that world. That was what I always wanted to do. So also had very judgmental views of a lot of people who are in that world. So I wanted to be in that world, but to do it right as far as I was concerned. Like I wanted to be true to, 14-year-old me.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
I'm so excited to get into this one. Chaz has lived the life of many. I absolutely love his philosophy and mindset on both giving back and mentoring, while also developing the industry landscape. It's rare, it's contagious, and it's exciting. This chat is well worth the runtime. It's a rare treat to hear these deep insights with a ridiculous amount of laughs. I also love how Chaz is all about what unites us and not separates us, something I feel to the core of my bones. Wait till the end to hear his great views. So it was quite thrilling to have done this chat with Chaz. He's someone I used to love on the telly, and I will continue to do so. And when I first saw him roughly 20 years ago through his show, The Chasers War and Everything, which was absolutely wild. It was groundbreaking TV for sure. For those that don't know, The Chasers War and Everything was a show ahead of its time, an Australian satirical show best known for their crazy stunts, and participants often got arrested in the process. The show left a big impact on me as well as the Australian industry. Anyway, let's get into it. Chaz Licciardello is a comedian, writer, and presenter. He was a member of the comedy group The Chaser. The impact that The Chaser have on Australian TV, culture, and politics is not to be underestimated. They were fearless, and there hasn't been anyone like them since. Chaz is also the creator and co-executive producer of ABC's new entertainment series, What the FAQ. He's also appeared regularly on Australian TV over the past 2 decades on shows including CNNNN, The Chasers War and Everything, and The Hamster Wheel, to name a few. Over the last decade, Chaz has also pursued his love of American politics and amazingly made it entertaining for others as the creator and co-host of ABC's Planet America. What the FAQ has just premiered on ABC TV and ABC iView, and Planet America airs Fridays at 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about getting arrested for TV, pranks gone wrong, being in the industry for 20 plus years, collaboration, passion, and his love of the craft, his respect for Rove, fear, being patronized, his new show, gratitude, mentors, and being a better person. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. This could be a hilarious place to start. What is your favorite stupidest stunt that you've done on TV?
Okay. So we're saying favorite because it's stupid, or just my favorite and it happened to be stupid?
The latter.
Different.
The latter.
The latter. Okay, all right. Well, I think my favorite stunt, without a doubt, actually, and it was scary more than stupid, but it was also stupid. Was the stunt itself was lame. It was the result that was just incredible, which was during the war and everything, we had this ongoing issue with current affairs shows. We had a segment about current affairs where I would academically analyze current affairs shows as if they had some kind of value, which they obviously don't. And we would break them down in a sarcastic fashion as if they were these great texts, right? Anyway, and we had this, a current affair and Today Tonight dealt with us in two different ways. A current affair co-opted us immediately. Like, they were very savvy. They understood that we were a comedy show. We weren't Media Watch. We were trying to make entertainment. At that point in time, Ben Fordham was their main reporter, and he's a very smart guy. He immediately, as soon the first time we did a stunt with the current affair, he pulled us aside and he said, "Here's my phone number. If you ever want access to us to pull a stunt on us, just text me. I'll leave the security door open. You'll be able to get in."
Wow!
And he was totally on board. And we turn up. I mean, I tried to not use his phone number. We tried to sneak in because it's always better for them to be taken by surprise. But as soon as they saw us, I was like, they were rolling with it. Like, they were having fun. They were making jokes. They always came out looking $1 million. Which is fine by us. We weren't trying to take them down. We were making a comedy show. And if they could take the piss out of themselves, even better.
Agreed.
Even better. If everyone's in on the joke, great. Because, we weren't trying to destroy them. We were trying to have fun, right? And it's more fun if they're in on it, right? So we got on great with them. Today Tonight, very different situation. Their producer, who's still there, and so I could get myself into a lot of trouble, is a very angry man. His guy, Craig McPherson, Sonia Kruger's husband, he's a very, very, very angry man, and it trickled down throughout the whole organization. And they, at the whole time, treated us like we were the enemy. They were very angry. They every time we made a story, we did some kind of stunt involving one of their people, they took it extremely personally. We kept on hearing from people who work at Channel 7 how much they hated us and how much they'll try and take us down. They kept on doing reports on us, like exposés, bullshit exposés. And you can tell how angry Today Tonight are with you with how long their expose is. It's like a 3-minute report. You can tell they don't really care. They'd be running 14-minute reports on us, like half the show.
Whoa, that's insane.
And they were ridiculous reports. They were just reports about, like, they weren't of any merit at all. They were just someone doesn't like us, and they just talk about it endlessly, and they treat it like we were murderers or something. Anyway,
the egos.
So it's a long setup. But we found out. Now, I've got to be careful what I say here because Craig person may well hear this. We found out from a source where their office was, right, in Channel 7. And so we thought it'd be funny to do the real version of what Ben Fordham was doing with us, which is we would just wait till one of them walked out of their security door, the back door, and then just walk in before the door shut, and then hold the door open, and we all file in. And we knew exactly where their office was, and so we went straight to their office before the security could get us, and then film our stunt with Anna Corrin. I don't even remember what the actual idea was. It was a really dumb joke. It was literally, she'd said something involving some profession, and we were dressing up as that. It was really dumb. It was a really, really, really minor joke because the joke wasn't about what we were, about the actual content of the joke. The joke was a meta joke. The joke was about the fact we went to their office to do it, which is something we often do in the War and Everything, where we go, not just War and the Chaser in general, we would often make stupid jokes, but in a ridiculous place. And it was the place we were doing it that was the joke. That also got us sued at one point in time when with Chris Kenny, the dog thing. I don't know if you know about that, but we got sued by Chris Kenny because we had a Photoshop of him fucking a dog. And the whole joke of that Chris Kenny one, ironically, was that it was at our expense. The joke was essentially us saying, oh yeah, we're not sensitive to critics, like we're not immature, and then we'd show a picture of Chris Kenny fucking a dog to show how immature we were. It was an ironic thing about us being immature, and And then he ran with that, going, "Oh, look what they did to me," as if we were seriously making a joke about him fucking a dog, which would be the most juvenile joke. That was the joke, that we were being juvenile, right? We like the meta thing, right? So anyway, so with the Today Tonight, we were pulling the stunt where we were making a really lame joke, but it wasn't about that. It was about the fact we went all the way to break into Today Tonight to make our stupid joke, right? And so what happened then was we made our joke. Anna Conn was great. No problems. She rolled with it. But then Craig Ferguson stepped in and got his security to surround us, wouldn't let us go. And basically I was trapped in their office, surrounded us with, I don't know how many cameras, somewhere between 3 and 5 giant cameras.
Wow.
And wouldn't let us leave. And like we said, well, this is illegal. This is false imprisonment. And he was like, well, sue me. What are you going to do? and I said, well, we are going to sue you if you don't let us go, because this is false imprisonment. This is against the law. This is literally against the law. And he said, well, give me a footage and I'll let you go. And I go, we're not going to give you the footage. And he goes, well, I'm not going to let you go. And we had this standoff, and so I said, okay, well, I'll call the ABC lawyers. Let's go. And so he said, great, go for it. And so I called the ABC lawyers. Because they're the ABC, everything takes forever. And it's like 2 hours before the ABC lawyers do anything.
You were there for 2 hours.
Yeah. And that is 2 hours where they got their number one attack dog, Brian Seymour, to just let us have it over and over again for 2 straight hours. He was drilling us with their cameras going. Now, normally it takes these guys 5 minutes to find something to nail you with, right? He had 2 hours. He had false move after false move. He could just keep on going. He had the footage. He had the.
Were you responding to him?
Yeah. Well, you have to, because if you don't, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. Like, oh, look how they react when the tables are turned. So you can't be silent. You need to be not just responsive, you need to be friendly. Yep. If you look scared, they'll use it. If you look angry, they'll use it. If you have any negativity whatsoever in 2 straight hours, they will use it. If you say one thing that they can twist, they will take it out of context and they will use it. And so you need to not just be friendly, but you need to give the perfect answer every time for 2 straight hours.
Have you seen the Simpsons thing where he's accused of the lolly on the lady's ass? And then they're like, no, Mr. Simpson, no. And you see the clock just changing all throughout. That's what I see, like a current affair type programs, like wearing a different shirt in the seat. And
absolutely. And I, as the world's leading and only academic of current affair shows, I was acutely aware, because I was the one who did the logging. I was the one who watched all these shows and relentlessly logged them and took notes and developed a theory about the way they work and stuff. And so I knew better than anyone exactly what they were going to try and do. And I knew the angles they were going to try and run. I knew exactly the stories they would try and make. I was thinking to myself, okay, there's like 8 different stories they could try to run here. And so I knew the questions Brian Singer was going to ask to try and manipulate us around to get the grab he would need. Because he just needs one 10-second grab to build the entire story around, right? And so I just made sure whatever I said, it wasn't going to give him that out of context grab that he could use. Right? And so I sort of decided what I was going to do. And this is still on YouTube. You can watch it. So you will know when you watch it. If you do watch it, you'll know what was going on now. I thought to myself, you can't say nothing. You can't say absolutely nothing. Like, you can't just talk gibberish. You need to give them some kind of angle. You need to give what the answer is to give them the worst angle, as in the least satisfying angle for them, right? And I decided the least satisfying angle for them would be that we are too concerned to follow the law and do the right thing, which is the worst possible angle for them to run, right?
Too concerned.
Yeah, they want to run an angle of either we're private school brats, or that we can dish it out, but we can't take it. We get stroppy when you turn the tables on us, or or we think we're above other people, we think we're better than other people, or that we break the law relentlessly, that we waste taxpayers' money. Like they're the kinds of angles they want to run. If you give them the angle that actually we are really, really concerned about, since we live on the edge, that we don't go over the line, that's not what they want to run. So I just, over and over again, I just bring it back to, look, we're just trying to do the right thing. I thought that we were following the law here. Like I thought that we were okay to do it. We run things by lawyers. We care about what the lawyers have to say. The lawyers say you can't do it. We're not going to do it. And so I made that my thing. Every single answer, I made that the lawyers. And so all they did in the end, they ran, once again, a 14-minute report on us, like they always do. And their angle was that I used the word lawyers a lot. They ran a counter on us, on me saying lawyers. And you just go, that is the most pathetic, lame story, right? But that's what they ran.
What was the... I was just going to say, what was the celebration like when you see that you won, you beat him?
Honestly, I was scared shitless. Like during the actual period, I was thinking, I think I've got them, but it's so easy. It's so easy.
Just one angle.
It's one slip, just one slip. It's so easy. And so I was really, really nervous when that went to air that night. Like they turn these things around so fast. When I was watching it, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. Like I beat Current Affair at their own fucking game when they had every single advantage at their disposal, and they had their number one guy doing his absolutely best. It was entirely, the table was rigged in their favor, and we still beat them. I was so happy. Anyway, that was the most fun I've ever had. I in terms of the show, that was the most fun I've ever had in the stunt, where I just felt like it was the ultimate reality TV. It was like being hunted. It was like I was out in the African jungle and I had no guns, and the lions were just surrounding me and just swiping. I was just dodging and weaving.
You're like
straight hours.
Like Neo from the Matrix.
Totally.
Did you email that producer and just go, thank you for the thoughtful piece? I thought we came out both really well or something. Did you ever contact
I really
him?
didn't want to poke the bear anymore, because he was really out of control. He was actually standing just outside the range of the camera, being angry for the whole 2 hours. In fact, there were one or two moments when I thought it was getting really hairy with Brian Seymour. I thought he'd exposed just a slight chink in my armor a couple of times. I thought I was getting really close to being in, like I could see him moving down a path. And I thought, oh, fuck, I think he's going to get me. And then Craig McPherson screwed it up by swearing off the camera, because he was there just having a fit, just off camera the whole time. And there were many times, no, not many, I just didn't exaggerate. There were at least 3 or 4 times when he was audibly calling us a cunt or something like that. And it was like, while I was answering, he was wrecking the answer. I really didn't want to poke the bear. He was a very angry man. And we heard from various sources that they ended up actually grabbing the phone records of every single Channel 7 employee to find out who had spoken to us. And then they were going to sack them. Like, they were that angry. They never found them, though.
This is like a TV show like that you'd have in like Curb Your Enthusiasm. You're like locked in a room while people are abusing you, screaming. You're all on camera. Did you end up suing them? How did they like release you from the cage?
No. We ended up going to, the issue was about whether we could. Oh no! In the end, the ABC and Channel 7 came to some kind of agreement where we ended up going to court over the footage, about whether we could use our footage of them.
Yeah.
And in the end, they won that we didn't use their footage. Right. And so what we did instead, we ran our own report, obviously, about it the day after they ran theirs, and it was news at the time. So we couldn't ignore it because we went all the way to the federal court and about it. And so what we did was in the end, it worked out great for us. We ran a reenactment, a Today Tonight style reenactment of what happened. Like, where obviously it was completely over the top, our reenactment, like where we had to, like, it was, like it was as unfair as it could possibly be as a joke.
Yeah.
And so it was fine for us. We got our comedy in the end. But then that's what happened. In the end, we went to court and we lost the court case, so we couldn't use their footage. But they sure used their footage of us.
But I would have, because it was false entrapment or whatever you said it was. Could you get them?
Yeah.
False imprisonment. Couldn't entrapment mean something else? Yeah. Did you?
We could have. Of course, we could have. We could have sued them, but
what's the point?
I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. That's not my way.
It blows my mind. I'm just going to read through a few just to give like context to everyone, because these are the ones that I remember, and this is probably only like 5% of what you and the Chasers did. You know, you Botoxed half your face, I think, to look like Daniel Craig. I think you were selling fake knives at a rugby match, and that made the news everywhere. You were arrested for driving a fake motorcade through a security area during the Apex Summit. I think that's when you were dressed as Osama bin Laden.
I was dressed as Osama bin Laden. That's right.
You did a trust fall with the PM. You kissed Rove, who was probably one of like the top media personalities or names in the Australian market.
I actually licked him. First I pashed him, and then I did pash him. My tongue pashed him, and then I licked him, and he had no idea that was coming.
Oh, really?
And that was sexual assault. But yeah, it was funny sexual assault. That doesn't happen often. It's not often you can say that's funny sexual assault, but that was funny sexual assault.
How? I actually want to know on that one, and then I'll go through the rest. How did he take that? Because you look quite frazzled in the He played it well. Was he frazzled, or was he going for the comedy?
No, he rolled with it. He is, honestly, Rove is one of the people I respect the most in the comedy industry. And you don't often hear other people involved in comedy say that. Like it's cool. I mean, not so much these days, but when he was the number one guy on TV, like on comedy TV, it was really cool to hate on Rove if you're in comedy, and like people go, oh, Rove, oh, he's so shit, oh, whatever. But actually, I've always had enormous respect for Rove, like huge respect. I'll tell you why.
Yeah. I
don't think he's the world's greatest stand comedian or something like that. I mean, is he? I mean, he's a professional. He's funny, but he's not my favorite stand comedian. And but what he does and what he did is something that no one else was prepared to do, which was he was prepared to make himself the straight guy to make the show funnier. Very, 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 very few comedians sacrifice themselves to help the greater cause. And he basically just sat there doing setups for the other guy to seem funnier. Like, he made Peter Hellier way funnier than Peter Hellier has ever been anywhere else. I'm not trashing Peter Hellier there. I'm not saying Peter Hellier's unfunny, but Peter Hellier's never been funnier than he was on Rove. And it was because Rove was there sacrificing himself to make Peter Hellier funnier. He was there trying to make Corinne Grant funnier. He made, it's no coincidence that everyone is at their best when they're on Rove. It's because that's what he did. He lay down on train tracks to make other people funnier. And it wasn't just about his product. I go to a lot of Melbourne Comedy Festival shows, right? That's part of my little pathology. The only other person I've ever seen in the industry consistently going to shows, like, I'm not talking about big shows, I'm talking about little shows of no names you've never heard of, is Rove. Rove shows up at all kinds of stuff because he just loves comedy. And unlike me, who would slink around in the back row in the shadows trying to hide, he'd sit in the front row of a show where there's 4 people in attendance. And he would just sit right there laughing his head off, even if it's a terrible show, trying to support them as hard as he possibly can, because he's just a good guy who knows that would make their entire festival. The fact that Rove turned up when no one else did, and Rove was there laughing his head off, even though they kind of suck. He's a very, very, very generous person. And that is rare in the TV industry. So I'm always going to say incredibly positive things about him. And this was just another example of that, where he had no idea what I was going to do, because that's the way I roll. And I did it on air. I don't remember if it was live. If it wasn't live, it was pretty close to live. And he was clearly shocked. I don't think he loved it, but he rolled with it. And he made it so much funnier with his extremely awkward, genuine reaction. And he's a champ. It's just that's a perfect microcosm of why he has been such a success throughout his career.
I love hearing stories like that, and also just the story of him supporting, especially in the comedy space. We've all got egos, and then for him to like put aside the ego, at least in that space, to set someone up. It's why I love improv, because it's all about, you know, what's for the greater good. But I'm also like taking a step back. You know, I just said a few things that have happened. You've been arrested a few times. You've been in the media. You've been attacked by the media. Where did the confidence come from to pull off all of these stunts and do 1,000 times more? And I just want to like preface this. This was a time, especially in Australia, because we've got a wide-ranging audience. In Australia, there's not that many channels, so everyone knows who you are and what the group's about. People know what's going on, whether they watch it or not. They know, like, you would have taken so many hits, and you would have known that. So I'm wondering. What was the motivation to keep on, or the confidence to do all of this?
Okay, well, number one, definitely not confidence. I'd say fear more than confidence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there is nothing that drives you harder than the knowledge that you have a 5-minute hole in the show that you need to fill, and you've got 3 days to do it. And because the War and Everything, we were making week by week. There was nothing in advance. And so there was like, we had our little slots. Everyone has their slot, and you got to fill it with anything. And if you don't, we were quite a successful show. Quite, like, for those who don't know, they want everything from, like, because they're either under the age of 85 or they're from a different country. This was some time ago. We were a very popular show at that point in time, and we were the first show on Australian TV that kind of became news in itself regularly. Like, where we were the first show that had recaps made of us while we were on air. Like reality shows do it all the time now, but when we were on, there was literally on news.com, as soon as we're off the air, the top article would be a recap of our show. But the recap would not be a nice recap. It was a guy called Colin Vickery who hated us, and it would just be savaging us for something. It would either be we've gone soft, or we've done something we've gone soft, or we're too mean, or we've done something offensive. There was always some criticism, and it was never consistent what the criticism was. It would flip around, right? And we were also the first show on Australian TV that got the Twitter. The Twitter treatment, like, where it was just because we were from 2006 through 2009, which was when Twitter was just starting.
Yep. and
we would, like, during Twitter, it would just be this constant stream of people trying to be funny off us, trying to drag off our success, our ratings, and to improve to build their accounts. And there was a lot of positive stuff, but there was so much negative stuff. So you were really conscious of the fact if you didn't produce a decent 5 minutes, you're going to get dragged the fuck out of. And let me tell you, when you're on the other side of that, you feel it. You feel it big time. Like, 10 comments feels like 100. 100 comments feels like the entire world. You know, like, and so it was the worst feeling in the world when you felt like you produced something shit. I can live with criticism. I'm used to it. But when I agree with the criticism, I can't live with that. That's what hurts me. When I'm looking at Twitter and I'm seeing people saying this sucks, and I think, yeah, it does suck. They're right. That really, really gets to me. And so I was trying to do anything I could to avoid that. And so I was trying to make the best possible segment I could. And the thing is, The Chaser we were 5 on air, 1 to 2 off air, depending on the show. People who had very, very, very disparate abilities and skills, you know, like and tastes. And so we all had our thing that we were meant to do. Andrew Hansen was the actor and the singer. If I was going to sing musical, if there was going to be some kind of accent thing, or some kind of something that required good, proper theatric performance, it was going to be Andrew. Chris was the writer. Chris was the one. We all wrote, but Chris was the best writer. Chris would produce sketches that were very much about the writing. He'd write a perfect sketch, right? Cool. Craig has always been the quickest off the mark. He is someone, he never prepares anything. He will just Like he'll walk into a scenario where he has one joke and he'll make it last for 3 or 4 minutes with his off the cuff responses. You know, like that's Craig. He's just really reliable. That whatever situation he's in, he can be funny, and he can be TV funny. Like he doesn't require editing. He just bang, 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 no problems. Jules was always the person who was best with politicians and delivering a clever, rehearsed, well-crafted, satirical point. That was what Jules was very, very good at. As you've just noticed, that doesn't include me. And what I just described is basically everything we did, right? So there was no room for me. So I was aware of the fact that I had no skill that they didn't already have. And I could do worse versions of what they could do, but why would you get me to do that? Other than satisfying my ego, why would I do that? Why wouldn't you just get Craig to do it or Jules to do it, right? And so I concluded really early on, well before the war and everything. Back in 2001 when we started, I concluded that my gap was going to be, my niche was going to be doing things that they won't do. Things that are embarrassing, things that are dangerous, things that are unpleasant. That was going to be what I was going to do, because while I wasn't courageous and I wasn't the devil may care person that people thought I was desperate enough to do it. And so, because I really wanted to make it in TV. Yeah. So I was going to do whatever it took. And so I very, very early on decided that I was going to be my niche, and I just developed it. We started 2001. As time went on, I was just pushing myself further and further and further. And I kind of developed my actual personality, as you're probably starting to get the sense of, is I'm actually quite nerdy and I'm quite anxious. Quite I'm quite neurotic, but I can pretend I'm not. And I learned to sort of switch personalities. That I basically just pull out a different personality when I was doing this stuff. I'd act like I was just rolling with it, when inside I was just dying. And I'd be, especially when I was doing the stuff where I was being mean to someone. Like, I really hate that. I hate confrontation so much. And I'd have to act like I was just having fun, but inside I was just cringing so badly.
You've got empathy and compassion.
Yeah, well, let's not over-egg it. don't make it positive, but I'm actually a human being underneath it.
Yeah.
But I was acting like I wasn't. I was acting like I was a machine. And that's just seriously just desperation of trying to make sure we get a piece. The whole time just thinking, if you don't pull this off, you're fucked. You're fucked if you don't pull this off. And let me tell you, if you think we were tough to other people, you see how tough we were to each other when we fucked up. Because if you didn't fill that hole, someone else would have to. You wouldn't be on air, and someone else would have to carry the load, and they let you know it. So
that sounds beautiful.
The pressure's on.
I have many questions on the collaboration side, but I just want to tie this up. Did you not have, as I said, we've summarized very few points. You've been arrested, you've had a lot of hits. Were you ever worried that you would end up in jail? Was there fear, besides the fear of, that's been driving you, fear of danger or your career could be over? Did you have that?
Absolutely. There were heaps of stunts I did where I got hurt, where I right at the beginning, where I learned this really. In fact, I learned this before we were on TV. I learned this when we were on radio. We were on Triple M before TV, and I used to do a segment called Challenge Chaz on Triple M, where I would try and the whole thing at Challenge Chaz was that people would get me to do things that were unpleasant. That was the joke. And so, for instance, it would be to try and get 100 items through the 10 items or less queue in a supermarket. Now that's an unpleasant thing to try to do, right? Yep. And the thing about that is it's radio. It's not TV, so you can't run with someone just giving you a look, which is what Australians do. And Australians, if you do something weird or strange, they'll just give you a look. Yeah. They won't fly off the edge. That's not what Australians are like. Australians are restrained, right? So if you want to get audio, you need to make them explode. Do you know how hard it is to make someone explode? You need to push them and push them and push them and push them and push them. You need to not just do your thing. You need to do it in the most obnoxious possible way to drive them to give you an audio reaction, right? And so that was really, really, really scary. And when people explode, they are likely to turn violent.
Yep.
When I was making the challenge show segments back in 2001, so I was like 23, right? Back in 2001, I was really fresh. There were no cameramen. When I was doing the war and everything, there are cameramen. There are 3 cameras there, right? And there's an audio guy, and those guys are big. Let me tell you, they are big. Number 1, you need to be big to carry a camera. Number 2, because they're heavy. Number 2, we chose big guys on purpose, because like that way the people know if they get violent with you, you have backup, right?
Would they ever have to step in, or it was already that? Like,
yes. And I'll tell you the one of those examples in a sec. But just to finish off, when I was doing Triple M, there was no one there but me, and I was recording at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night at Hoyts in George Street in the middle of the city, in Sydney, because I was trying to get people when they were drunk, because they give better reactions, right? Because you want an audio reaction. So I would get people, and I'd pick people who I think are going to explode. You can tell someone who's got a temper.
Have a talent.
Yeah, and I target them. I target the people with a temper because they needed to explode. If I didn't get an audio reaction from them, I didn't have a piece. It would just sound fake. It would just sound like I'm going, oh, look at me doing this thing. I needed to get audio from them, right? So I would frequently, like one of them, I remember I was doing a citizen's arrest, right? That was the challenge. That was the challenge, Chaz. Do a citizen, place someone under citizen's arrest, and so I obviously went for someone to give me a reaction, which is the bouncer outside the nightclub. I tried to place under citizen's arrest, and that guy, I did it 15 times to different people to try and get the best response, right? And I got manhandled like all night, over and over again. Like, every bouncer reacted violently, although not all of them reacted with audio, but they reacted physically, every single one of them. And that was a horror night. And I would also, by the way, I'd be wearing this huge trench coat because I had, at that point in time, the recordings were the tape recorders were quite big, right? And so I'd have to hide the tape recorder because it was like a hidden mic. And so I had this huge trench coat, like a crazy person, doing crazy things to people late at night when everyone's drunk, right? So there was a 100% chance of, and I was trying to push them. There's a 100% chance of something going wrong, right? Yep. So anyway, so yeah, right from the beginning, I just got my ass kicked so often. The war and everything, there was almost none of that because by that time we got our paddle down. We could do it with video. I had help. It was actually a lot easier. Yeah. But to answer your question about with the war and everything, the time that was scariest physically, I hurt myself physically from stunts. Like I was my own stunt man. And so there were things I did where I was physically hurting myself. Like I hurt my neck at one point in time from that's another whole nother story where I was intentionally falling off a tightrope over and over again. And obviously the tightrope wasn't 10 meters in the air, but even to fake it, you need to be at least 1.5 meters off the air. You need to get the camera on the ground looking up, right? And just falling from a tightrope, so head first, 1.5 meters over and over and over again to get the shot, like 30 times.
Oh my God.
You fuck your neck up, right? And so anyway, so I did that. I got physically hurt quite a few times. I do have some permanent injuries from that. But the time that I was most scared was when we were doing a stunt where we were replacing buskers with pokies. Because the idea was that pokies are replace musicians in pubs, and now pokies are going to replace musicians in the street as well, right?
Yeah.
And so we wheel in a pokey, and I'd be like, guys, sorry, you got to move. The state government needs to make some more money. You need to piss off. Yeah, and buskers, right? Buskers they're a mixed bag, right? You get different kinds of buskers, and we happened to get a crazy busker, and he pulled out a knife and held it to my throat. Right?
No.
Yeah, like he full on. It was like a classic hostage situation, right? And as soon as he did that, we immediately, the cameras weren't, that was a more hidden camera situation. So as soon as he did that, the cameras, like, they jumped out and the guy was going, mate, this is can the camera. This is comedy. This is not real. This is not real. And he's just screamed at me, I know what this is. I know who the fuck you are, you fucking thing. And like, I thought, oh, I'm in real trouble now, because he knew exactly who I was and he hated me and he just wanted to hurt me. And that was really, really scary, because the camera guys couldn't do anything to stop him, because
he's that close.
He had the knife, at my throat, and that took a lot of talking down, like he was a rabid dog essentially, and that was really scary. That was the moment I thought, shit, you might be about to die. This may be the end. And,
you're just smiling and laughing casually. Yeah, I almost died.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, so it's okay now.
I have so many questions, and I don't know. Okay, there's the fear side that you've spoken about in terms of getting that 5-minute clip or whatever. Yeah. But then there's obviously danger. Yeah, go on.
Okay, sorry, just interrupt quickly. There's one other aspect about the fear. I have a natural stutter. When I was a kid, I had years and years and years of speech therapy, because I used to just have like a permanent stutter. Like, I was a very big stutterer. And I basically cured it through years of therapy. Yep. But every now and then, when I'm under pressure, it comes back. And I, like, every now and then when I'm really tired or when I'm really scared or whatever, the stutter just takes over. And when it takes over, I can't stop. Like, it becomes crippling, right? And when I make these TV shows, I am constantly tired. Like, when I'm making TV, I don't sleep essentially, because we do everything. All our shows, we do everything. And so I make these shows physically wrecked. And so just every now and then, the stutter comes. As soon as the stutter comes, piece over. I've fucked it up, right? And so that's another aspect of it as well. That increases the fear. That's another thing I'm thinking the whole time, thinking, don't stutter. So that's the other aspect of it. Anyway, but go on.
No, thank you for bringing that up, and it's great that you've been able to, thrive with it, because that would actually pull you away. I think you're in hospital a lot when you were up to 7 years of age, and I'd actually, we'll go here. I'd love to know, I think you had a conversation with yourself about you wanted to make changes in your life, but just before that, just having a stutter, being a presenter and the 10 other billion things that you do, a stutter could deter you from being a comedian, but you work through it. You didn't let it take over, and you've still done your craft. That's very rare. A lot of people can go, I've got this, I don't want it. So I'm just wondering what made you want to push through that, and then we'll talk about the hospital.
It's not that it's very hard to explain exactly what I was so desperate to do. It's not that I wanted to be famous. It's not that I wanted to be a comedian per se, because I'm not a comedian. Like, I'm not a stand-up comedian. I write. I certainly can do plenty of writing, but I love TV. I as a kid, I just adored TV. I just wanted to, and I adored radio as well. I just wanted to make TV and radio. It wasn't about the broadcast. It wasn't about the trappings. It wasn't about what it was. I just wanted to be part of that world, because I loved that world. And so I was prepared to do anything to be part of that world. That was what I always wanted to do. So that was my, and I also, as a kid, I adored that world, and I also had very judgmental views of a lot of people who are in that world. So I wanted to be in that world, but to do it right, as far as I was concerned. Like, I wanted to be true to, 14-year-old me, who idolized The Late Show, which was around when I was 14. There's the Working Dog guys, their first, well, not their first show, their big show. It was between 1991 and 1992, and that was very formative on me. They were my absolute heroes, and I thought it was the greatest show ever. And I loved them, and I loved everything that they were doing, and I just wanted to do it like them, and because I thought they did it right. And and these days we get, like, when I make Planet America, there's much smaller ratings than there were with The War and Everything. I don't care. I don't care if it's 100,000 people watching it or 2 million people watching it. I just want to make it. I want to make that product, and I enjoy making that product. As long as someone watches it, I don't make it for myself. I do want, part of that world is entertaining people. So I want people to be entertained, as long as they're the right people. I don't want to entertain dickheads. I want to entertain good people.
Yeah.
And so like to me, I'd get no joy out of making a shitty reality show, for instance, even though that would probably rate more. Because I just think I don't give a fuck about these people. These people, that like the people who are watching this, they don't love TV. They're just tired after a day after a hard day at work, and I'll just watch anything. You know, I don't care about that's. They could just be watching dog videos. Like what I'm producing is of no consequence to them.
Yep.
Whereas the people I want to entertain are the people who love TV, and the people who are like me when I was younger. I want to entertain the people who care, who are discerning, who love the medium, and who, like me, were disappointed by so much of the medium, but still loved it and were desperate for the stuff that they respected. And I want to produce stuff that the people I respect, like that, respect. So they are my masters. The cynical 14-year-olds are my masters, and I desperately want to please those guys and girls and non-binary, and I want to I was prepared to go through any adversity to do that, because that's all I wanted to do. That makes me happy. I'm often not happy. That makes me happy. When I feel like I've done right, that makes me happy. And so I often spend my life questioning what I'm doing. I feel
that's good.
Like I've been given a lot of opportunities. So
no, I was just saying that's good that you're like questioning and go on. Yeah.
Look, I feel like I've been given a lot of opportunities. My parents were not rich. They sent me to a very snotty school. They paid a lot of money to send me to that school. And I had the best education you could possibly have. I've got a law degree. I've got all these things. I've got all these advantages. I mean, these days people would be going, "And you're a white man." Although I would say that at the time I was an Italian man, which wasn't such an advantage in the 90s. But having said that, I'm not playing that card. I'm just saying that lots of people didn't have my socioeconomic advantages that I had, and my education and my opportunities, and I feel that keenly. And I just want to not waste it. I want to pay it back. And I think this is the way that I can pay it back. And I'm prepared to do anything I can to do that. So if that involves getting my ass kicked, so be it. If that involves spending long nights in the edit suite or being tired or getting arrested or whatever, so be it. Like if I could do it like Craig, I sure would, because that'd be fucking easy. But unfortunately, I don't have that ability. So
it is extremely rare to hear someone talk about like gratitude in the way that you do and absolute love of the craft, because you've been a staple in the TV, Australian television market, which is only a handful of people. It's very hard to make a living in the Australian market. Yeah. That's why everyone tries to run to America, like myself.
Yeah.
And it's just to still be doing it for this long and to still have that and bring it back to, obviously you're doing it for yourself as well, but bring it back to the audience and want to inspire like you're inspired. That is unbelievably rare. We can be corrupted. We can have huge ego. You're a superhuman. I want you to speak more to that, because there's very few people on this planet that would still have that passion that you have, and it's contagious. And you just love it, and you want to, inspire other people as well, the right people, which is more important.
That is what you're saying is, I mean, I hate to say it's true because it sounds self-aggrandizing, and my narcissist alarm is just going off at the moment.
At least you got one.
But what you're saying is true, that TV creates a lot of dickheads. Like people who start off normal become dickheads. They really do. It does, like, especially when you're successful. It does things to your brain. And when you're in the eye of Sauron, so to speak, you have to be so aware of the fact that, am I becoming a dickhead? Am I starting to think I'm better than other people? Because it happens to so many people. Am I starting to feel entitled? Am I starting to think I'm here because I'm special? Okay, not because I'm lucky, and not because I've worked hard, but lots of people work hard, and lots of people don't get anywhere working hard with more talent than you've got. Am I here because of a chain of events, and should I remember that? Or am I a special human being? So many TV people think, but after a while, start to think they're there because they've earned it. And you really need to remember, yeah, you earned it, and so did many others who didn't get it. Like it's like I don't want to take anything away from them, because you don't get sustained success in TV. In TV, you can get short-term success really easily if like through social media, through reality, whatever. It's really easy to get short-term success. But to be there for more than 5 years, you got to earn it. Every single person who you think is shit, like some presenter who you go, oh, they're vanilla, they've got no talent whatsoever. No, that's not true. If they had no talent whatsoever, they would have been gone after 10 years, because there would be someone else who's good looking who could do it as well. Like who's younger, who's a better demographic. If someone, especially if someone is, some kind of, I'll give you an example. Someone who if I didn't work in TV, I would think you have no talent whatsoever. And that is Daryl Summers. I would think you don't know who Daryl Summers is? Daryl Summers was the host of Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And he now hosts Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
Right? He is a guy who if I was at home and I was watching him on TV, I'd go, this guy has got nothing. This guy, like, he's bad at comedy. He's got this schmaltz factor about him. He seems like he's 150. This guy's got zero, right? That's what I would think. I don't know Daryl Summers. I hope he doesn't hear that. But I don't know Daryl Summers, but I don't know what he's got. But I know he's got something, because he's been around for 40 fucking years. And if you don't stay around for 40 years unless you've got something, like, you just don't. Like, because there will be someone else who can do nothing, who's better suited than you after a while. And so they're like, there's no sentimentality in TV. They would get rid of you real fast unless you had something. And so yes, people do earn their position, so to speak, but they need to remember that hundreds of thousands of other people also earned it, but they're not there. And there's a reason. It's not because you're special. It's because you're lucky. And so I just think, that's something to bear in mind.
I really like that take, especially coming from someone like you, like roughly 20 years. It is unheard of. You do not hear this, and I'm grateful that you're grateful for your like recognition. It's really empowering. And one thing that you also are promoting, that we're all people as well. Just because someone's been doing it for 20 years doesn't mean they're better than someone else. And it can be very easy, as you said, to think that way.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that I do think it's on you as well to act like you remember it as well. It's nice to retain some kind of humanity about yourself, but but I do think that you need to show it, and the way I show it is by trying to give as many opportunities as I can to up and comers. That's something that I'm quite kind of obsessed with. Like, you may not know this because we don't make a big deal about it, but ever since the war and everything, on The Chaser, we hired a relentless line of researchers. We often had 4 researchers. We did not need 4 researchers. We could do our own research. Those researchers were comedians who we were conscious of the fact that there is no pipeline in Australian television. Like you said, there aren't many opportunities. There aren't many shows. So what tends to happen is someone has a successful stand-up show in Melbourne, or these days they have a YouTube channel or something, or an Instagram account which has a few followers, and then some TV exec goes, "Oh, great, you're the hot new thing. Let's give you a show." You don't know how to make TV. TV's different. Like, it's not an Instagram account. It's not a stand-up show. It's a different skill entirely. It's like saying to someone, "Oh, wow, you scored a century in your school cricket match. Let's put you in the NBA." Yeah. Like, it's a completely different skill. Right? And there is no reason they will succeed. Every now and then, there's someone who does. Hamish and Andy succeeded. They got pulled out of radio, bam, they were brilliant on TV straight away. Right? When they had their sketch show, it was just a great sketch show. And they were immediately good. They're the only ones I know who have just been pulled out of complete context with no experience whatsoever and just immediately succeeded. Right? Usually they suck. And in Australian TV, when you suck, goodbye. Like there's no second show. There's no opportunities because there just aren't many projects.
Like done and dusted, you won't get a second
Totally. And
chance.
it's the end of your career. Bye-bye.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah. Because once you've got a failure on your record and that's all you've got, they're just looking for the next hot new thing. There's always a hot new thing. There's always a new Instagram account. There's always a new stand-up show in Melbourne. So so there's no bridge from talent to knowing how to make TV. Like in England, what happens, and England is definitely the place which we should copy because they've got a great TV culture. In England, what happens is if you've got some skill, if you have a good stand-up show, you get a radio show on BBC4 or something like that, like some shitty off-Broadway radio station. You get half an hour or maybe 15 minutes. And then if you're good at that, then you might get another one, and then you start becoming guests on panel shows. And then you just get more and more and more practice. And you don't get your own show until you've been doing it for 10 years. Right, and then when you get your own show, you're good. You know what you're doing, right? In Australia, that bridge does not exist at all.
I've always found it. Sorry to interject. I've always found it so weird. Like you're a good stand-up comedian. Now here's your show, and they don't necessarily. Yes, stand-up comedians can write, but they can't write a script. And very few cases, a few of the stand-ups here, they've been like offered to pitch a show, and I will help them with their script because they're just writing jokes. But a script has to have like a start, middle, end, and tie. And anyway, it just blows my mind.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. And I mean, you're talking from a structural point of view, which is 100% correct. But I'd go even further. Even if they understand structure, and they watch TV, they're not an idiot. They might understand the structure of TV. What they don't understand, I find, because I'm skipping ahead a little bit here in my story, but I often try and get stand-up comedians and try and teach them how to do TV. What I find is they never understand that humor is different on TV to stand-up. It's a different humor. Like the way it works in stand-up, I'll just give you a quick rundown on the difference. The way it works in stand-up is you find something funny, a funny concept, and you stretch it out. It's usually quite a lengthy story that built up to that funny moment, and then you carry it through. You try and dwell in the feeling of that funny moment of what that is. You try and stretch as long as you can. You try and have another iteration. You go, and how about this? And how about that? And then when you're finished with it, you call it back. About 5 minutes later, you call it back and you refer to it again. You stretch it as long as you can. The best stand-up comedy shows have maybe 4 or 5, even less, 2 or 3 key comic moments that they build up to and they carry through. And there are lots of little jokes around it.
Yeah.
But they can tell you what their killer moments are, and they spend 15 minutes on those killer moments, building them up and carrying them through. And then that's how stand-up works. TV is the direct opposite. No one has that attention span. They're not even paying it. Stand-up, they're sitting there in a dark room and they have no focus but you. The TV, they're ironing, they're cooking, they're running in and out, they've got kids around, they're looking at their phone, they're not paying any attention at all. If you take 15 minutes to build your story, they've flicked channels long ago, right? You need to go bang, 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 bang. As soon as you get one bang, you produce a different bang. And that different bang needs to be a different topic. You don't do the same topic over and over again. You go bang, bang, bang. You just keep on just throwing comic concepts at them. You don't have to go joke, 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 joke. You have to go comic concept, comic concept, comic concept. If you are on stage, that would be a huge waste. It's a different mindset entirely. And so I think a lot of people don't understand that. And that's something you need to teach and something you need to learn. Like as a performer, the difference between TV and stage.
That's a big difference as well.
Yeah, and exactly. It takes years. And so anyway, so we would get comedians in as our researchers just so they could watch us make TV. Right? And they'd be hired there as a researcher, but they'd be allowed to write. They'd be allowed to be extras in segments. They'd be allowed to do whatever they want. They could sit and edit sweet. They could watch us edit. They could do whatever they want. They had a free license just to walk around and to contribute whatever they wanted. No pressure. No pressure, no expectation. Cool. They just grow at their own rate. And when they were good enough, we'd give them segments. Like we'd give them segments. We'd gradually just, and then the checkout came along, and those people started to become the reporters. The reporters on the checkout were people that we made researchers on, like during the Hamster Wheel in particular, which was the show after the war and everything. And we would gradually, basically ran a TV school in our staff.
That's
and we
so
just
great.
staffed the whole show with just people who were up and comers. And some of them kicked on, some of them didn't kick on, but we gave them opportunities. And I think, unfortunately, as time has gone on, budgets have been smaller, but so you can't carry quite so many people. Like we were carrying a lot of people at one point in time, but I still do it. And the show which I'm supposedly promoting with this podcast, like the FAQ, we have a few people that we were carrying in the staff as well. But on top of that, I intentionally got a couple of reporters on this show who are people who you wouldn't have heard of. Yeah, and to try and keep the production line going. And what I hope to do, if this show works, which God, I don't know if it's going to work. I hope it does.
It works.
If this works, and we keep coming back, I hope to do a Saturday Night Live type style thing where we just get in new reporters every year.
Cool.
Like, not complete new, just get in another one, get another one. And some people can go off and make some other show. That's fine. Yeah, but just I want to create a production line in Australia. And I want to have a situation where people can just do one report. They have to be doesn't have to be their show. They can just do 1 5-minute report. We gave 6 guest reporter slots out in this series where there was just people just doing one report. They didn't all make it. A couple of them did. They didn't all make it, but it's okay. The people who didn't make it, they got a good experience, and we'll give them another one. And we'll give them the opportunity. And hopefully then that creates that no pressure bridge, which is why I think it's just critical for TV. So this is a very long answer to say that if you genuinely are grateful for your position, then pay it forward. Because honestly, there's one reason why I am where I am, and you can sum it up with 2 words, and those 2 words are Andrew Denton,
Yes.
who gave us an opportunity. Like, that's the only reason we're on TV. He was, you won't remember this, you're way too young, but he used to do an interview show called Enough Rope, which was very successful on the ABC. And they were desperate to get him on the ABC to do it because he was a big star on Australian television. He did a Tonight Show on Channel 7 in the 90s, and he was a big star. And the ABC were really, really keen to get him in 2000. And he just said no because he's like that. He just does what he likes. And
Crazy.
In the end, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll come to the ABC. You pay me lots of money, but there's one condition. You need to give these guys a TV show.
Wow.
He is the one who gave The Chaser a TV show. He blackmailed the ABC to give us a show. So he paid it forward. And I want to pay it forward too.
Okay, there's so many. We could speak about this for like 10,000 hours. What first of all, you're a legend because, it's one thing to, he helped you. That's great. But to actually go out and change the landscape, because I briefly knew this, that I've got a lot of awareness from this chat, but as you said, TV is so hard, especially with the current climate. You mentioned budget, all the other stuff, stress. To actually get joy out of helping people, like I come from an accounting background. Most people do not want to help the intern or the graduate get to the next level, even though long-term it makes everything better. People often have a small thinking mentality. Yours is forward thinking, and it might not even pay off for you. It will, and that TV will get better, but they might not hire you. They might not, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're not even thinking that way. I think that's remarkable. And then it's remarkable to recognize like greatness, like Andrew Denton, I think he's been brought up a few times on this podcast as well, in that, first of all, why would he bring you guys? He's been in the industry for so long. He could say, get this person a job, this person a job, but he would have worked with so many great people. Then to, recognize that you had something and go, we're doing it if you bring these guys on. That's remarkable. I love hearing the stories. And that's also a little bit about what this podcast is about, is that we can thrive together. I've got an abundance mindset. Just because you succeed doesn't mean I don't need to succeed. By you succeeding, I succeed. So
yes.
I greatly appreciate that. I want to go back to the hospital. So
yeah, sure. So just before you do, can I say one more thing about Andrew Denton? Just to hammer home how amazing he was. He, on top of that huge sacrifice he made, well, no, it wasn't a sacrifice, but on top of that great gesture of his,
well, it could be because they could say no.
Yeah, totally. That's true. But honestly, I think he would have been fine either way. He was cool. He was doing fine. But yeah, on top of that great gesture, he at that time was making breakfast radio on Triple M, which means he was getting up at 3:30 every morning, and he executive produced our show. He was teaching us, and he basically took it upon himself to teach us how to do TV, which no one else does.
Yep.
Right. And to do that, you need to take a lot of load. And he would literally, straight after Triple M, I mean, our show was only short. It was only during the election. So it was like a six-week production period in total. But during that 6-week period, he would wake up at 3:30, make breakfast radio, go straight from breakfast radio to the ABC, where he would work with us until 10 p.m. every single night, 7 days a week. And then he'd go home. He'd go to sleep at midnight or 1 a.m. and then he'd wake up at 3:30 a.m. the next day to do breakfast radio. He did that for 6 weeks, and he was under immense physical strain. He had a stalker at the time as well, which a lot of people don't know. There was and so he had to, going to Triple M, he had to go a really circuitous route because there was this obsessive stalker following him around. He had security and everything. It was really tough, like physically tough for him. But that's just the guy he was. And after 4 years of looking after us, when we finally, 3 years he really looked after us. In the 4th year, we were kind of starting to take over because we kind of learned what we were doing. In the 4th year, we started to have fights. We'd had fights before. I mean, they were always good-spirited fights, but, our views on TV were different to his views. I could go into detail, but we want to go into the hospital. That's fine. But we had different views about how to make TV than he did. And I've gone on, the Chaser have gone on to enact how we feel it should be. But I'm talking behind the scenes, not on air.
Yeah.
But that led to some fights, and the tensions grew as time went on. And when we got to the 4th year, he was like, "Guys, you don't need me. You don't need me. We are fighting more than we used to because you are big and bad enough to run your own show. You do not need me anymore. So do it." Even though he owned us, he was our executive producer. He owned us. He owned our show. He owned everything about us. He said, "I'm signing you off. I'm releasing you. You just make your own show." And he could have asked for a slice. He totally could have. Legally, he definitely could have. Morally, he could have. But he didn't. He didn't want a slice. He didn't want anything. He just said, "You're done. Make your show. Fly, fly, fly." And he wanted nothing. He wanted nothing. He wanted no credit. He wanted nothing. Just, he did his act. He did his bit, and he let us go. And it was so impressive.
That is, especially you guys are arguing and, there might be a clash of belief systems and how things should be done. Egos, this is how it needs to be done. And he could step away and be like, "Guys, go and flourish in your own way." That's also that is awesome to hear. You don't hear that in particular too often.
No, he's a legend, that guy. He really is. I cannot speak higher about him.
Okay, I will.
I know I'm saying lots of positive things about various people, but I'm not a suck-up. I'm not lying here. I'm just, the people who I have negative things to say about, I'm not talking about.
Oh, we heard from the guy abusing you when he locked you up in the cage. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't have positive things about a crazy person. But I mean it. Everything I'm saying, positive things about people. This is not entertainment. This is not show busy, kiss, kiss, kiss on the cheek thing. I mean it. These are good people.
I think everyone can see it. To me, I don't always emulate this, and it's one thing to say gratitude and gratefulness, but I want to just say it one last time. It is remarkable when you have people in position of power, especially who want to give back. And, it's one thing to do that, but then to get joy, it's such a long-term thinking mentality. I think the world could all do with this in all industries, not just TV. It's something that I admire. So thank you for doing it. And now back to, the hospital. So I forget how we were tying this in, but you're in hospital a lot, I think, for roughly 7 years of your life. And I think you had a conversation with yourself. And you kind of had, I think it was a big, deep and meaningful conversation about the changes you wanted to make. And it sounds like that's kind of changed your life as well.
That is true. The two are actually unrelated. You've gotten two different stories and you've put them together. So let me explain.
Don't hire me as a researcher.
No. I don't talk about myself very much in the press. So I imagine you have very few sources to refer to here. So I don't blame you at all. But as a general thumb, like I said, I have I have a pretty strong narcissist alert, and when I have opportunities to rave about myself, I try to not do that, even though all appearances would suggest the otherwise on this podcast. Okay, so let me just tell this both those stories very briefly. I was very sick until I was about 7. It was a gradual process becoming less sick. Essentially, my immune system was not great, and I also had chronic croup. And so what happened was I would get croup just because as soon as I got sick, I'd get croup. As soon as I got a cold or something, I'd get croup. As soon as I got croup, my immune system would fall apart. So I would then get pneumonia. I would get all kinds of other things. It was like complications. There wasn't like one particular thing I had. I just had a series of complications constantly. And so I was in and out of hospital. And croup you often grow out of as you get older. Like as your windpipe grows, your trachea grows, it's harder for you to get croup attacks. And so when I grew big enough, I just got less croup as I got older. And by the time I was about 8, I just didn't get croup anymore. So I was worst when I was 2 or 3, and it gradually became better as I became older. But I have very vivid memories of many hospital visits until I was about 7. Yeah. It meant that I was in and out of school a lot. Which wasn't a problem academically because I kind of was teaching myself a lot of this stuff as well. Like I was kind of a self-motivator and my mum was a bit of a drill sergeant as well. And so like she would just get me to be doing times tables and stuff at home, just whatever. The hospital I'd do maths books and stuff.
Were your parents from Australia? Because you mentioned you're Italian.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, they're my whole family's Italian, but my parents were the first generation. Both of them are first generation Australians.
Okay, I'm first generation, so I understand the mentality.
Yeah. They both were. You got to work hard. You need to succeed. Drill your hard, which is fine. I got no problems with that. But yeah, it meant that academically, I had no problems whether I was at school or not. I was always ahead of school anyway. But socially, it was more of an issue, and I just couldn't relate to people. Like these days it's quite fashionable to describe yourself with various, shall we say, neurodiverse syndromes. I definitely, I'm sure I've got a lot of them. I'm sure that I don't know which ones, but I at the very least, I'm pretty sure well, I don't want to go too far here, but I know I've got Asperger's at the very least. I know that. I know. I've probably got ADHD. I've probably got I don't care. I don't think these things matter. I think they are descriptions of symptoms, and you deal with the symptoms. Like you don't need a label to if you struggle with X, you deal with that.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a label to deal with the X. That's my personal view.
Yeah.
Like I'm not writing off people who have particular intellectual issues, but I'm just saying that I think that people often take comfort in labels, and I think the labels don't matter. It's
I'm very similar.
Being functional, that's what matters. Being functional. It's
thriving.
Yeah. But anyway, my point is I wasn't very social, and I was much more likely to hide, and when I actually talked to people, I said weird things. I didn't have any friends. My behavior was baffling in general when I look back on it. I got myself into constant trouble. I was always on detention. I got suspended at one point in time. I was getting into fights with people all the time. I hated my parents. I was just a mess. I was a mess in terms of I was always angry. I was always lashing out, and I was always losing. Just whatever I was doing, I was losing, and I got frustrated and horrible. And I got to I remember that there was a pivotal moment in my life, which was New Year's Eve between 1986 and 1987, where I had a really bad year 4. At that point in time, I was going to my snooty school because I'd been suspended from my old school, and my parents sent me for psychological evaluation, and they said he's got all kinds of issues, but one of the things is he's very bright. You should send him to a better school where he should be challenged more. And so they sent me to this school, and but the problems continued. It didn't matter. I was still having all kinds of issues. And I mean, I was better. I was better at the new school than I was at the old school. If anything else, I had a fresh start.
Yeah.
But I was still struggling. And year 4 was a bad year. I wasn't sick, but I was just constantly clashing with my teachers. I was escalating everything. I was hated by the people in my class. And I was just lying in bed on New Year's Eve, just thinking about the year that just passed. And I was just thinking, this is a good time to reevaluate. And I was thinking, I hate my life. I hate where it's going. Everything about me sucks. And the problem is me. And I need to change it.
As a year 4 to have that.
Yeah. And so I thought to myself, it's not going to happen overnight. I can't just click my fingers and change me, but I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work on it slowly. I'm just do one thing at a time. I'm going to try to gradually, let's think about the person I want to be. And I imagined who I wanted to be. I imagined the character I wanted to be. I imagined the kind of things I would do, the way I would react in situations. I imagined, like, I wanted to stop being angry. I wanted to be calm. I wanted to roll with the punches. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be different. And I just thought, okay, well, just be that way. It's up to you. Be that way. And then I knew it wouldn't happen straight away. But basically, over the next 3 years, I just worked on it, just bit by bit. And I'd fall off the wagon every now and then, but I just jump back on. And I just keep on going. I just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And by the end of year 7, whether it was just me just maturing, or whether this was going to happen anyway, or whether it was through my work on it, or whether it was all 3 combined, I was a completely different person. Like, I was just a completely different person. And it wasn't me pretending to be a different person. I was a different person. I was reacting genuinely in a different way to the way I'd reacted when I was in year 4. And I could see I was on the winner. So I just kept on going with it. And I think you can do that. I don't think it's delusion. I think that when you say that to people go, oh yeah, you're kidding yourself. Like, you're going to end up on some shrink's couch in 20 years' time saying, I'm not the real me. But that's not true. If you want to be someone else, you can be someone else. You just need to work at it. That's all. Like, what you do becomes you.
Yes.
If you smile a lot, you become happier. If you, like, it's just a fact. It just, that's the way psychology works.
I agree. And I never really quite like fake it till you make it. But, there's some very like positives in there. As long as you're doing it like for you might not like this language, but like for your highest alignment or your highest good, and you're doing it for like your right reasons. Like, I want to be like a jerk salesman, and you want to like implement that. If you're doing it to be the best version of yourself, you can 100% rewire your brain and your patterns. It's even like going to the gym. One's feeling quite large or not strong, you go and you change your body, and then the fitter you are, typically the healthier you are, and that changes everything. And I agree with you 100%. We've all got the tools. If a year 4 can do it, we can do it in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s onwards.
Totally. Even if it's as simple as, you know what, I fly off the handle too much, I'm just going to force myself to take a breath. In any situation, when I start getting angry, just take a fucking breath. If after you take that breath, you're still angry, sure, roll with it. Take a breath. Force yourself to take a breath. And now I do it, now I don't just take a breath. Sometimes I'll take days. Like that. That's what I'm like now. When I'm pissed off at people, which happens, I would just go, just you're tired. You're tired, you're crabby, whatever, just don't react. Just let it roll. If you're still angry about this in 3 days' time, then approach them. But
sorry for cutting off the breath. I've studied pranayama, which is all about the breath, but making it like more normal to most people. The breath is, first of all, it's like life if you want to look at it in that sense. But we're not told, if we're in a situation, we can be stressed, our brain's not working properly, what deeper, because when we're stressed especially, or we're angry, the brain's not working properly. That's very scientific of me. But when you breathe, it releases stuff, and you've just got that split second. And people talk about it from a performance point of view, how, maybe the lines aren't being delivered well. You take that breath and it changes everything. It's something which is so basic and so simple, but it literally can change our entire life just through the breath. And so I'm very happy that you bring it up. How did you figure that out? Because it took me like 20 plus years to figure out that you can breathe to help you in situations.
Look, there was a book I read, not a self-help book, it was a fiction book about, I don't remember what it was called. It was I don't remember what it was called, but it was one of those sort of Judy Blume style books where one of the characters was a boy who just said no to his parents, and his parents didn't know what to do with it. Like they just didn't know how to react when he just said no. He just refused to, he wasn't justified in it. He was being a brat, but like he discovered that the secret to gain your way when you're a kid is just to refuse to participate. Just say, no, I'm not doing that. And then there's no options. If you just say no, they can't make you. They can't make you. They can punish you. They can make your life miserable. They can't make you. You say no. And that was very powerful. I used to read a lot. And that was when I read that really stuck with me. What stuck with me there was just the idea of, even as an 8-year-old or whatever, you can take control of yourself.
Yes.
You have agency. In the end, even when you're a little kid, you have agency if you just use it. Most people don't use it. They just go with the flow. But if you have control, the ultimate control about what happens to you and around you, if you just use it. And so that was what I took out of that.
Oh,
and
wow.
then I just applied that to ways that I could use that agency. And the breath thing was just something I just came up with myself. What means of trying to take that agency. And it wasn't just that. There was a bunch of things I did, but that's just one off the top of my head, where I was just thinking, okay, right, so how can I use my agency to be a better person, a better version of myself as I mold myself into this new person. So that's the way I came up with it.
I love the word agency, and it's something that you're highlighting and something I strongly believe in, that we can all make the change in ourselves. We don't need to rely on anything. Most of us are zombies in 90% of our life. And just, reiterating that it's up to us. It's empowering. We don't need someone else to save us. We've got it within ourselves. Actually, on that, this is one of the points I'm really interested. You've been working consistently over the years, but there would still be times where you haven't been able to work for whatever reasons. I think there was a period, I don't have my dates right. I think it was 2005. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you relied on, I think, like corporate work. And I just love to know kind of your take, because this, as we said, is a very hard industry to thrive in, and you've been thriving for a long time. But then when there's that moments of no work and how you've been able to cope, and
2005 is a really interesting period, and it's actually, I want to answer your question, but there's actually something more interesting about 2005 than what you've hit on there.
Yes.
Because once again, it's not your fault. You don't know this stuff, right? Because we don't talk about it much.
Yeah.
I'll say the interesting thing, and then I'll answer your question, okay?
Yep.
The interesting thing is about 2005, really interesting thing, is that in 2001, we did an election show, right? 2002 and 3, we made CNNNN, which was a parody of a cable show. They were like 9 episodes each, okay? So most of the time, we weren't making TV. This was a very short period. 2004 was just an election show as well. So we made, over the course of 4 years, we made 30 episodes of television. Okay, so most of the time we weren't making TV, right? That was just little bits and pieces. So we needed to survive even without the TV, because also we weren't making much money from the TV.
Yeah.
Like we were not getting paid much at all. Like we were maybe making $20,000 from the TV each year, right? Maybe.
Wow.
So we needed other avenues. We were making the Chaser newspaper, which we haven't talked about, but that was what we were doing. That's what Andrew Denton saw, which is why Andrew Denton wanted to get us on TV.
Yep.
We're making this comedy newspaper, which was very hard. I've been using the word relentless a lot during this interview. It was relentless. Even though we put it out once every 3 weeks, it was meant to be every 2 weeks. We put it out every 3 weeks, a month, something like that. We're just working on it all the time. And when we were working on it, we'll stay up all night. It was really hard. And we just couldn't have proper jobs, because we obviously weren't making money from the newspaper. We're just doing that just to develop our skills as much as anything, and because it was fun. So we developed. We gradually leveraged our TV to do corporate work, which is just, we're talking just comedy speeches at functions or whatever. We were famous enough to be able to get away with that. You'd make not much. You make like maybe $1,000, $2,000 per speech, but that would tide you over. Actually, I'm answering your question first before I actually get to the to the interesting bit. And so when we weren't making TV in 2005, we just did a lot more of them. We also, as a group, we worked as a group. We pooled all our income together. We formed our own company and pooled all our income together. Wow. So that when some people were doing, because one of us would get a job as a writer on, say, Comedy Inc. or something like that, and so there'd be a little bit of income there, whatever. So we'd pull all the income we'd make as a group and then split it as a group. So that way we could all get through. And so, we basically made it. And we also borrow money and then we'd pay it back to the company through when we got a TV job, because the TV would be for a short period and then it would disappear. So we basically made it in 2005 that we would each make $600 a week. We'd all have $600 a week. And between all of us, we'd probably raise enough money from our various ventures. But if we were short, that's okay. We'd make it back in the future at some other time, and then we pay the company back. So that's how we got through. That's the actual answer to your question. Yeah. But here's the thing. That 2005 break was self-enforced. And that's what people don't know. Because we were making, so we had these 4 shows, these 4 years of TV, not doing much. That's when Andrew Denton let us go to do our own thing.
After the Chasers?
After the 4th series, after the election show in 2004.
Okay.
That's when Andrew Denton said, just fly. And so he talked to the ABC. So he go, what are we going to make now? And the ABC said, we pitched a few shows to the ABC, like proper shows now, not 4 weeks, like going longer. And the ABC said, we love you. It's fantastic. I tell you what we want from you. We want you to make a Tonight Show. We don't have a Tonight Show. We don't have a late night show on the ABC, a nightly late night show. We want you guys to be the host. This is going to be massive. But we want Chris and Craig to be the hosts. And we want the rest of you to be writers behind the scenes and, maybe supporting cast or whatever. But this will be a Tonight Show hosted by Chris and Craig. Because Chris and Craig, what they were doing to bring money in was they were hosting Drive on Triple J at that point in time. They had a show called Today. And and so they had established themselves as their own brand, right? And the ABC said, we want to make them the stars of the show. And we talked amongst ourselves, said, what do we think of this? And we said, no, we're not doing that. We're a group. We're not going to have stars. We're a group. So we said, no. We said, we want to do this other show. And that show was The War on Everything, by the way. And the
gotcha.
ABC said, no, we don't want to make The War on Everything. We want to make The Tonight Show, and we want Chris and Craig to be the hosts. They said, okay, well, we're doing nothing. And we just chose to be unemployed for a year. Like they were offering us hundreds of thousands of dollars when we were earning,
wow.
Yeah, when we were earning at that point in time $600 a week. And we turned it down and chose unemployment rather than to take that huge opportunity because we said we are not going to become like that.
Yeah.
Like that is not who we want to be. And by the way, we'd already turned down Channel 9 twice at that point in time who wanted us to make a sketch show for also much more money because we thought that's the road to failure, doing a shitty sketch show on Channel 9. We're not really a sketch team anyway. So we turned them. In fact, the first time we turned down Channel 9 was before we were on the ABC. Channel 9 heard this on the radio. They saw our newspaper and they want to take a shot at us. So while it's true that Andrew Denton made us, we turned down Channel 9 before he made us. So and I'm glad we did. But that was harder to do. That was a lot harder when we were absolutely nobodies.
Is that because of the integrity? Was that due to the integrity of this is what we stand for, this is what we want to do, and this isn't in alignment with our vision?
Yeah, yes, but even more than that is pragmatism. We want to have a career. There's no point just grasping at straws if it's going to be a shit straw.
Yeah.
Like, and just say, and I'm not saying Channel 9, it wasn't an opportunity, it was a great opportunity, but we just didn't think we'd be able to make that show well. And so we just thought, let's not end our career before it begins. Let's wait for the right opportunity.
That's pretty forward thinking.
Yeah, let's keep getting better, and let's make sure when we do it, we really do it. Anyway, so we'd already done that. We already pulled that particular lever, but we did it again in 2005. We just sat out and we did nothing. Well, actually, we did a stage show, but that helped us make money as well. We went on tour and did a little stage show for about 2 months. And then we threw it into everything else we were doing. But yeah, we spent a year in TV unemployment, potentially the end of our career, potentially. And we chose that. And in the meantime, the ABC did what we thought they'd do, which is they would sack everyone, because that's what happens at the ABC. They sack everyone every 2 or 3 years. They just did it again. That's the way of the ABC. We knew that would happen, because even though we'd only been around for 4 years at that point in time, we'd already seen 2 rounds of sackings. And so we thought they'll sack everyone again. And they did. And then the new people came in and we said, we'll make the war on everything. They said, great. And then that was 2006. So that's the reason we had our year of unemployment. It wasn't adversity that was enforced on us. It was adversity we chose for ourselves because we wanted to succeed. We wanted to do what we need to succeed. It wasn't about, yes, integrity, sure, but it wasn't primarily about integrity. It was about self-preservation. It's we're just right.
You don't hear stories about that every day.
Like I hinted at before, I kind of run a bit of a TV finishing school with the staff of the shows I work on. Like I take an active interest in that. Before I said that I'm not really good at anything when it comes to TV. That's true, but I'll tell you one thing I have learned.
That's nice.
No, it is. Well, there are 2 things I'm actually good at, if I'm being honest. I'm good at learning. I'm good at learning to replicate talent and various things. Like that, when I don't have natural talent in something, I'm good at learning how to act like I do. And I'm also good at teaching. That's what I'm good at. I'm actually good at teaching. And so I really enjoy bringing people on because I like teaching them things. And maybe it's because I myself am so robotic and programmed in what I do. I can teach other people to program themselves in the same way. But what I was going to say is something which I pass on to a lot of the people coming through is one of my nice little aphorisms I throw around is you are eventually defined by your choices. That is who you are to the outside world. Doesn't matter what you are inside. To the outside world, you are the sum of your choices. And the most important choice you can make is what not to do. What shows not to make. What choices, what paths not to go down. They are the most important choices you can make. And the sum of those choices is you. So choose wisely. And that is, I think, what we applied ourselves. And thankfully, we made the right choices, I think.
Yes, I agree. And you've got many skills. You go down as the number 1 also producer and like content creator in Australia. But also just on the example that you gave before, in saying no to hundreds of thousands of dollars as a group, $600 a week is nothing. Yeah. Just it's mind blowing that especially at such a young age, you had that foresight to know, I love this. I don't want to do this for a year or 2 years. I want to do this for the rest of my creative life, whatever that is. And the ability to say no, because we're told to say yes to everything. And that can be very important, especially when we're starting out. But to see something that you just know is not right for you and to be able to say no, people would have thought you were insane. And I'm sure your parents did and other people in your circles. Yes, but you guys knew, and it was the right decision because there are very few shows that I remember, and this was like roughly 20 years ago. I remember Seinfeld, The Simpsons, and I still remember parts of The Chasers, and I'm sure you get this all the time. It's to leave like an imprint, shows that you were right. You backed yourselves and it worked out. And even if it, inverted commas, didn't work out, you knew it was still right for you and it would have, who knows what would have happened, but you made the right decision for you guys despite so much money, which can cloud our decision making.
Yeah. Oh, can I say, while to be honest, the day-to-day life of making the war and everything was horrific. It was a very hard show to make.
Yeah.
It was so worth it because of things like you just said. Like, that is why I'm doing this. It makes me feel very good.
Nice.
And it's so like, that gives me a huge thrill. So thank you very much for saying that.
Too kind. I love it. You've changed, not only have you changed the TV landscape, but you changed comedy. And I think that was really, really important. And I could say a lot more, and I'll sprinkle through. I won't give you too big of a head. But it's also interesting on that example, from the failure side, you talked about success and succeeding long-term. I found a few quotes, but this one in particular, I found really empowering. And, you were talking about how you've learnt and you're a really good teacher and you like to learn. But this quote was very interesting to me. I learnt more than most comedians about failure. And I thought that was very interesting given your career and how long you've been doing it for. Can you expand on that quote?
Yeah, sure. I suggested before, I am very programmed as a creator. Like, I treat it like a maths problem, essentially. And there are a lot of intuitive people out there in comedy. Craig is a great example. Someone who's just intuitive. He can't tell you why something is funny. He just has an instinct of he just knows how to say funny things. It just happens. Whereas me, if I make a joke, if I write a joke, I can tell you exactly why it works or it doesn't work. I can tell you exactly. I can tell you I can theory craft it. Completely. Like as I have a book. That's the way I work. But you don't get that. That doesn't come from nowhere. Where that comes is from years and years and years of trial and error. And when I first started, it was 100% error. It wasn't just some trial and a lot of error. It was all error. When I made up my mind that this is what I wanted to do when I was 12, right? That period, that New Year's Eve, I had a fair idea of the path I was going to go down, but I thought maybe it might be teaching, maybe it might be journalism, maybe it might be TV. At that point in time, by the time I was 12, I was like, it's TV. I definitely want to do this, right? Or radio. It's entertainment. And so what I did was, I thought, you got to get good at this, because I didn't know how to even begin. And so what I used to do was, there was a guy, breakfast radio in Sydney at the time, there was a guy called Doug Mulray, right? And they used to advertise about how dangerous Doug Mulray was or whatever. I forgot what the ads were. It was but they ran these ads about how wild and crazy he was and whatever. And I didn't even listen to him. I had no interest in actual Doug Mulray, but I used to go to school and I'd come up with jokes, and I would go to school and go, oh my God, did you hear what Doug Mulray said this morning? And I'd tell my joke. And almost invariably, they just go, that was really shit. And go, oh, Doug Mulray. Doug Mulray isn't very good, I guess. Poor old Doug Mulray, he didn't get a lot of ratings in house because I was bad-mouthing him big time with all my jokes. So I just try out jokes as other people, like pretending I heard them from other people, just to see how they would react. And that was a complete failure. But I'd try a different thing and try a different thing. Then I got to high school, and my high school was, as I said, very privileged school, lots of resources. Some of the resources were, they had they had a newspaper that we turned into a comedy newspaper, right? And so we took it over. 3 of the people who ended up being in the Chaser were in that school, and we took over the newspaper, and we just made it a comedy paper. And so I was constantly writing comedy for this paper and just trying shit. And it was our paper. So they couldn't get rid of us. And I would try things, and then I would ask, I had some friends who I trusted, who I had an honest relationship with, and they knew that they could tell me the truth. And that's really important. If you get someone some feedback from someone, they need to know they can criticize you, because if they don't know that, they won't, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And so they need to know that. And I would get honest feedback from them. And I would say, and I gradually over time, over 6 years, and also that this is how privileged our school was. We even had a school TV show. We even filming, writing sketches and filming sketches for a TV show that would air at lunchtime, like once every few weeks.
Cool.
So we got to practice that as well. And everything I did, I just got just the most extreme feedback from as many people as I possibly could. And you might think that was hard because all the people I talked to were just saying, this sucks. And I'd ask them why, and they'd tell me why. But it was really useful. It was really useful. And I never took it personally because I didn't expect to be good straight away.
Oh, that's
and I just wanted to just make progress, and I, like, why should I be hilarious straight away? Of course it's not going to work like that. So it was cool to just find out why I sucked. And you know what? I've discovered since then that process was probably not very efficient because most people don't know why comedy sucks. When comedy sucks, they know that they don't like it, but they don't know why. If you ask them why, they will tell you or give you a reason, but they're probably wrong. There's probably something structural that's wrong with it. They don't realize because they're not a professional comedy writer, right? But I had no other resources at that point in time. I was like a 14-year-old kid, so all I had was just people's opinions, and I just get opinion after opinion after opinion. I then get to uni. By the end of high school, I mean, when I look back on what I wrote, because I've got some of it still.
Nice.
When I look back on it, it's terrible. Even at the time, I thought to myself, "Oh man, I'm nailing this." I'm like, the people I was asking were going, "Yeah, this is great," and we had a good reputation. By the time we were in year 10, we had a good reputation. People were talking about how awesome our comedy newspaper was. We thought we were great. When I look back on it, so embarrassing. But I can't imagine how bad that was when I started. because when I was good, I was terrible. But anyway.
There's stages, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it was terrible.
Okay.
At the end of year 12, I think to myself, okay, you're pretty good now for a school kid, but that's not professional level. And so I basically went to uni to give myself time to learn to write.
You did science law, right?
I did science law, yes. That's 5 years to learn to write. I was thinking, like, I'll go to uni. I mean, I'll get the degree, and the degree can back me up if I fail.
Like plan B?
I'll probably fail. Yeah, well, that would be science teacher. I hadn't changed my ideas. Science teacher is the science. Journalist was the law. So I was either going to be a journalist or a teacher or in TV, right? So I was getting a degree. I wasn't working very hard on it. Just made sure I had the degree. And while I was doing that, I was doing everything else. Stand-up, theatre, sports, the reviews in particular, the law review in particular. From first year through to fifth year, I would spend 3 months a year doing nothing but writing for the law review and learning to perform as well. And when I was in first year, I wrote, I'd say, maybe 40 sketches, none of which got up. 0. And I still had my focus group. I'd go around, I'd ask them as I was writing, going, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And they'd tell me, usually at that point in time, I had a new focus group and they were a better focus group. And they were saying, no, that sucks. Yep. And gradually over time, I learnt through trial and error. And then I learned through trial and error to get something up at the law review. By the time I was in third year, I was getting quite a lot of sketches up. By the time I was in fourth year, I was the director of the review. But I was learning as well that from going on stage at that point in time, because when I started getting stuff up in second year uni, the sketches bombed. And it was a really formative experience. It was a very formative experience going on, because at Sydney Uni, there was this culture in the reviews on the opening night, all the other reviews would come to your review and they would bomb it. They would just scream abuse, so just pure heckling. And that was okay, because we all knew that was happening. And that was hilarious. Part of the fun. And you go heckle them as well. Yeah, that was part of the culture, right? And you learned to get to the punchline fast, because you would get heckled badly if you didn't. And it became kind of like the Today Tonight situation 15 years later, where you're running the gamut you're running the gauntlet, and you're just getting, if you make one mistake, you're going to get booed. You're actually going to get booed, and it's a test to see if you can get through without being booed, right? And so you're anticipating everything that can go wrong, and you're trying to just negotiate your way through. And it's a great writing school. It's a great boot camp for writing to teach you, get to the point, to make the joke better. You think it works? Make it better, because you can get booed if you don't make it better. And so it was a real great finishing school. The first time I got on stage to perform one of my sketches, I couldn't even hear myself. I was getting booed so loudly. It really stayed with me. It was so scary. And I've never forgotten that. And it stayed with me. And every time I get metaphorically booed these days, the same feeling comes back. I haven't forgotten it. And it's just a great incentive to make it work, and to work harder, and to make sure that doesn't happen. And so by the end of uni, I was getting okay at sketch writing. But it was only through failure. It was only through failure and taking it on the chin and learning from failure constantly. I got to that point. Then, basically straight from uni, I was in the chaser. Like I said, I was 23 when we started. I finished uni 22. So basically, I was on TV the year after that. And I wasn't good enough. The first year of the chaser, all I was doing embarrassing shit. Like I said, I wasn't as good as them. I would just put myself in embarrassing situations, like things that Craig would just refuse to do, I would do. At that point in time, it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't getting arrested. It was just embarrassing. Like, I'd be wearing embarrassing costumes. I'd be semi-naked. I'd be doing things where you're in an awkward situation. Like, I'd turn up as a loser-gram at an election night party for the loser, and I'd sing them songs about how much they were a loser. And it was great TV. But it was so awkward and awful, and it was a horrible experience. But that was all I could do. Then the CNN came along, and I was trying to write sketches. And Andrew Denton, his attitude was, if you're not good enough, you're not on air. Like, I'm going to give you every opportunity, but best ideas are on air. Best ideas are on air. Best sketches are on air. That's how it works, guys. No free drinks here. And I wasn't on air. Craig is better than me. Julian's better than me. And so those guys were on air all the time. If you watch CNN, I was on for maybe 20 seconds of the show. There was this ongoing joke, this running joke of the Brussels desk. We'd cross to the Brussels desk and there would be something surreal happening. It was a dumb joke, but that was all I was, because all the things I was writing weren't getting up, because Andrew Denton was saying, not good enough. Keep going. And he'd try and help me. He'd try and talk me through why it wasn't
hugely
good
positive.
enough. Yeah, totally. He wasn't like, oh, fuck off, you're awful. Like, he was being encouraging, but he was just saying, I'm not going to put you on air unless it's good enough. But let's try. I'm going to give you every opportunity. Let's film. I would do a sketch, and he'd say, okay, that's not good enough for these reasons. Do it again. I'm prepared to pay for the camera crew and the editor to make 10 different versions of this sketch before we get there. But let's do what we need to do to get you on air. And I just wasn't getting there. And it was just driving me harder and harder and harder. And I was more and more determined. I was learning more and more about what didn't work. And right at the end of CNN, there was 2 series of CNN, about 9 episodes each. Right at the end, in the last 2 weeks of CNN, if you watch CNN, you'll see the last 2 weeks are just all me. They were segments that I had been working on for 2 years.
Oh, that's crazy.
Over and over again. They finally got good enough. And then they were all on air at the end. Andrew Denton said, oh, you got there. And we had no time left. So it was just segment after segment I was making. But that was a really, really, really big moment for me. I was going, okay, I am good enough. I just need to work at it. That's all. And then the next thing we made, we had a year off. And then the next thing we made was The War and Everything, which I became one of the more popular people on. And it was as a result of, first of all, being drilled in primary school, and then the newspaper for 6 years at school, and then the reviews, the review all through uni, and then 4 years of failure on TV. That is a combined, what's that? That's a combined 17 years of failure before I got to actually knowing what I was doing. And by the way, I've improved a lot since the beginning of the War and Everything as well.
Yeah.
But for the trial and error. But it took to get good enough. It took 17 years of constant failure. And if I couldn't have, if I, meanwhile, there were other people who I'm not going to name who were working with us at times who had similar failures to me and just gave up.
That's why I find this so empowering, is because sometimes, we start the guitar and we suck and we give it up. But some of yours could have been more brutal because it's also an air. You're in a team. It sounds like you mentioned at the start that your teammates would abuse you if it was bad.
Yeah.
You had someone you looked up to. The stakes are high. Yeah. But despite all of that, you knew you loved this, and you have this longevity mindset, which is so rare. And everyone can, take a bit of it or share it. And despite all of that, to recognize, you just want to get better. You want to do this for the long haul. You want to show that you can do this, and you were relentless in doing that. You talked about fear and stuff, and yes, that was a driving factor, but often fear will work the other way. You still recognize the fear, said hello to it, and go, you know what, I'm gonna, be the best that I can be, and it's continued. Rare.
Absolutely. And can I say the toughest part of all of that during that entire period, because especially the reviews and that period there, the booing and all that kind of stuff, while the exact moment getting booed was horrific, it was actually a lot of fun. The actual review was a fun experience to be part of. Yeah. And I was enjoying myself while I was failing, because I didn't take it personally. I just thought, this is the road you need to go down. Not when I say you, I don't mean everyone. I mean me. Yep. I just could tell this was the road that I personally would need to go down. And I was prepared to do that. If you're prepared to do it and you're prepared to work at it, you can do it, whatever you're talking about. But you just need to work. Some people need to work harder than other people. And for me, I had to work really hard. And so that was okay. So all that process I'm talking about, I kind of enjoyed. That was okay.
I think you have to enjoy it.
Yeah, there's one time it became hard. And this was the toughest bit. It was when we were first on TV, that first series, the election show. It's a pretty big deal when you first go on TV, right? It's not just a job. It's wild. It's just your friends cannot believe that you're on TV. Your family cannot believe that you're on TV. It's huge. It's like you won the lotto. It's the biggest thing in the world. Every single show we had a party, a viewing party of the show, right? Like the episode. Like we take it out of the pub, and we wouldn't hire it out. We just take it over. All our friends would just send on a pub. We'd play it on the TV screen, and we'd all sit there, and everyone would laugh their heads off at stuff that wasn't particularly funny. And then it was just all, it's the best ever. And everyone's slapping each other in the back. Everyone's got lots of positive. They try to be as positive as they possibly can, supportive as they possibly can. Wonderful, warm environment. Yeah. And I'm not on the show. And they know I'm not on the show. I'm in the credits, but I'm not in the actual show. And they come up to me afterwards to talk about how great the show was, and they know I'm not in the show. And so there's this awkwardness. There's the show's so great. Oh, well done. That's great. And then they see Craig and go, well done. Oh, so great when you did that. And I know they're thinking to themselves, how do I get around this? This is kind of awkward, isn't it? He did nothing, but I'm paying him on the back. And they're being as positive as they can be. They're not being negative. They're trying to be supportive here. But I could feel the silence. I could feel what they were thinking. And that was so awful that people were trying to be nice to me to patronize me because I wasn't good enough, and they knew it. And that was actually the hardest bit. I hated that so much. Every time I wasn't in a show and at these viewing parties and people were acting like it was the greatest thing in the world and I should be so proud of myself even though I wasn't even there.
Well, you're still involved, but I understand what you're saying.
I know. But honestly, I wasn't much involved. My writing wasn't getting up either. I was being carried. Let's be blunt here. I was being carried. And that's okay. That's okay because that's where I was at. Yeah. And I now carry other people. That's cool. Being carried is all right. It's as long as you're trying, that's okay. You can be carried as long as you're trying. That's what matters. And I was trying really hard. So it's not like I felt like I was a bludger. I just felt it's so much more empowering to be booed than to be patronized. It really is. It really is. You feel a lot better. You feel like you at least you've earned your stripes. If you get booed, whereas you feel like you're just riding off other people's coattails when you're being patronized, and you are. It's a fact. And it's just and that was hard. That was the time that I was that made me very depressed. And I was just so determined to earn my way on that show. It took 3 years to do it, but that was the thing that was hard.
Thank you for bringing that up. And, it's a very interesting journey and like what drives us and stuff. Despite all, I'd say, going through all of the lessons that we've spoken about and how, we've spoken about fear and, at some level you would have had to like reinvent yourself through your learning mindset. Has your view of success changed over the years, or has it always been the same?
No, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. From even before I was on TV, all I wanted to do was to please people who loved TV as much as I did. It's still all I want to do. Like I'd make different shows now to what I used to make. These days I make more information and comedy than just comedy. But over the years, that's just because I've just learned that's kind of what I'm better at. So I've moved into that direction. Like I'm good at processing information, and so and I'm good at communicating something complicated in a simple way that everyone can appreciate. Yeah. And so I try and do more of that. Also, I feel like there's so many things we haven't talked about. I feel like as a person on the ABC, I have an obligation to provide ABC programming. I think there's so much on the ABC which is just, that could be on Channel 9. Why is that on the ABC? Why is the taxpayer paying for that? It's just, all you're doing is stealing a slot that could be used by someone else who's doing something that should be on the ABC. And so I don't want to make a show that could be on Channel 9 if I'm on the ABC. If I want to make that Channel 9 show, I'll go to Channel 9. Like, fine. That's all right. But I feel like what the ABC should do is to do stuff that is beneficial to the public in some way, or provides them with something they wouldn't otherwise get. Like arts programming is not going to be on Channel 9, so that should be on the ABC.
Yep.
Something about Indigenous culture ain't going to be on Channel 9. That should be on the ABC. And where I come into it, information. Channel 9 doesn't do information, real information. So if I'm going to do consumer affairs, ABC. If I'm going to do American politics, ABC. So I try and come up with shows which I think belong on the ABC.
Yep.
And I forgot how we got onto this. How we got onto this?
We're talking about the view of success and how.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So now I'm making different shows. I'm making more informational stuff. But even when I make an informational show, I want to make it for someone who loves that kind of thing. When I'm making Planet America, I'm not making it for a 14-year-old kid, but I am making it for someone who loves information and loves American politics. And I'm making shows for people who love what I'm making, and I'm trying to please them. I'm trying to make them feel like I'm trying to improve their life. That's what entertainment's meant to do. It's meant to improve your life. And if I feel like I've improved the lives of the right people, the people who care, the people who really have their heart in the right place and want the right things, then that makes me happy. That's my definition of success. When I'm looking at Facebook, when we put our shows up on Facebook and I see the comments, and I see someone give a nuanced comment that makes me think, like, they're really into this topic and they really like the show, that makes me feel successful.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And, I think you've sold, I want to talk about your new show, What the FAQ. Is that how you pronounce it?
What the FAQ.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Hopefully after it hasn't started yet, you shouldn't know how to pronounce it.
Oh,
I hope after a while people will know how to pronounce it.
Well, the way that it's going to be planned out, it's already been out for like 2 days. So that way people can check it out. I'd love to know a bit more about it. I've been reading about it. It sounds amazing. And yeah, tell me a little bit about it.
Okay. The basic idea is to have a show where people can just send in whatever question they want about anything, and we'll go away and do real research on it, potentially experiments, our own experiments. to get a real answer to that question, but to then present it in an entertaining and hopefully funny way. So it's kind of like it's at the crosswalk of information and entertainment. And the idea behind it is that I feel like I came up with this idea like 6 years ago. It's been taken a while to get to here. I feel like we've been in this period since probably about 2013-ish, I'd say, where people just have no trust in anyone. They have no trust in authority. They have no trust in the inverted commas experts. They have no trust in the media. They have no trust in anyone at all. And they want to. They want to trust people, but they just can't, because there's always agendas and there's always bias, and there's pretense. There's people pretending that they are trustworthy when they're not necessarily. Now, I'm not saying that no one is trustworthy. I think lots of people are trustworthy, but I think that that the community is generally struggling as to know who it is they can trust.
Agreed.
Even though there are trustworthy people, we just need to know who they are, right? And so I wanted to create a show where people could trust us, where we had no agenda, where we were not pushing anything at them, where these people did not pretend to be experts. None of us pretend to be experts. We're all comedians.
But
that we have a genuine go. We're smart comedians. We're comedians, we're smart comedians. We have a genuine go at trying to get to the bottom of shit. And like that's what the checkout was like as well, except for it was about consumer affairs. None of us were consumer affairs lawyers, but we were just people who could read the law and understood it. And so people could trust us that we were independent. And when we gave people consumer affairs advice, they believed us. And I want people to be able to do the same thing with this show. I want people to, when they're wondering something and they've got nowhere to go, that they go to us. That's why I hope. That's why I hope that evolves over time. Now, the first series, we're kind of just learning how to make this show. So I hope people like it. But I think over time, I'm hoping it evolves into a show where we are a trusted resource, but also a fun show that has a lot of variety, is positive. Like we're not shitting on stuff. Like the world is, I think, an interesting place. And I think having a TV show that brings it out is nice.
Yep.
I think like having a bit of wonder. I don't think there's much wonder in TV anymore. I think having a bit of wonder, I think would be nice. Like that's what I love about Radio Lab. I know on a podcast, let's talk about podcasts. I love the wonder of Radio Lab. The fact that they just, when they do things, it's like, oh, this is actually really interesting and cool. Like I want to get a bit of that on TV. And so I'm hoping we develop that over time, but I'm hoping as well at the same time we create that pipeline I talked about to bring through new talent over time. And so then it can perform a public function in a lot of ways. That is, I think if we succeed in doing that, that will be a new kind of format, and it will be validating all the opportunities I've had. So that will make me happy. That's what I'm going for.
I think just hearing your story and what you stand for, and also what you just said about like the world and stuff, I agree 100%. And that, you're doing it with integrity. People will like it because your character's coming through in this show of how you've been making it. I think that's really empowering. In terms of, 6 years is a long time. What's the feeling now that it's about to be released?
I'm nervous. I'm nervous because the way TV works, if it doesn't rate well, there's not coming back. And to be frank, the first series that we've been working on, I think there's some good stuff there. I think it's a solid show. I think it's better than most of the stuff out there, to be perfectly honest, but it's not exactly as I want it. There's things that I want to improve, things I want to tweak. I don't think we've got the final version of this show yet. And I'm desperate to make the final version of this show, because one of the things I failed in the past was none of the millions of things we could have talked about was in between the hamster wheel and the checkout. We had a show called The Chasers Media Circus, which was meant to be a completely different show. It was meant to be a completely new genre that had never existed on Australian TV and was going to, inverted commas, reinvent television. I was so excited about this show. And in the end, for various reasons, it didn't end up anything like I wanted. And at the time, the executives were going, that's okay. You can make this show over time. You can evolve it. And we didn't evolve it. We didn't get close to evolving it. And we just completely screwed it up. I mean, it rated okay, but we pulled the plug on it because it just wasn't what we wanted it to be. And we couldn't find a way to make it what we wanted to be. And so I'm really nervous about that. I don't want that to happen again. I have this vision for what I want this show to be. And I want to get there. And I don't want to stop until I get there. Cool. And right now, I think we've got a good show. I think a good show that is approaching what I want, but it's not exactly what I want. So that's where I'm at. I just am desperate to get the opportunity to make the show how I want to make it, and then to see if it works, and hopefully it will. I
think a lot of people want to go on the journey with you. So how do people watch it?
It's on Wednesday nights on the ABC at 9 p.m. And also you can see it on iview, and we're putting up lots of stuff on YouTube as well. So WTFAQ, what the FAQ.
And if you're not in Australia, how can they watch it on iview?
iview, I don't think iview is geo-blocked. I think they should be able to watch it.
Okay, cool.
I don't think iview is geo-blocked. It used to be geo-blocked, but I think they should be able to get on iview, even from overseas. But YouTube, we're putting stuff up on YouTube as well.
Okay, I'll put all of that in the episode notes below so people can check it out. Okay, cool. Everyone check it out. I'm very excited. And because I've written so many TV shows that I want to get made, it's rare when you see someone with enthusiasm and you're smiling and you're so, we've spoken about the gratitude, but the joy that you have talking about the show, it is contagious. I'm positively jealous of you. I need a better word of that. It's what I aspire to. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope everyone can check it out, because there's no greater feeling than doing what you're doing, and it's well deserved. So what we're going to do now is a quick rapid fire segment. The first thing that springs to mind, but you can take your time to think about it if you need. And I won't comment on them because I derail them every time.
Sure.
We've answered some of these, but what's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
I'd say my special ingredient is the preparedness to do whatever it takes. Literally whatever it takes. To never, ever, ever settle.
And how have you mentally been able to thrive despite, controversies, negative comments, and some, we spoke about violence and stuff like that?
I'd say there's two things, the two aspects to this. First of all is I am actually living my dream. I am extremely grateful for the fact that I have been living my dream. Even before I was on TV, I was living my dream. And now I'm on TV, I'm definitely living my dream. So it's hard to not enjoy that. On top of that, the dream happens to be a very fun job on top of that. Like it's a job where there's lots of, especially the shows that I make, have a lot of variety, a lot of intellectual stimulation. They're challenging. It's hard not to enjoy that. But the other thing is that I had a second answer as well. Hang on. That will have to do. I had a second answer.
If it comes, it comes.
It is easy to keep on going when that is all that you've ever wanted to do. Yes.
And this is a very open-ended question. How do you see the TV landscape at the moment?
I think it's incredibly dire. I think TV as an industry is dying and in front of our face. I think that there's that less people are watching, the budgets are being diminished, it's going down the sink. Essentially, like you have a situation where you have diminishing returns creating less reasons for people to watch, which then create more diminishing returns. I think that people haven't worked out the next business model. There is the business model, the old business model on TV is dead. People are trying to work out what the next business model is of whatever replaces it, because something will replace it. Yeah. They haven't worked it out yet. And what that means is that the people who should currently be the up-and-coming stars are on YouTube doing it for nothing. And that's not right. And that's not sustainable. So, yeah, someone is going to work it out. I hope that I can help be part of that process, because that's something I'm thinking about. But no, right now I think TV is in a lot of trouble. And that makes me extremely sad. Like, to be there, given how much I love it, to be there at the death is a funny feeling. Like, you almost kind of feel like you kind of think to yourself, oh, I wish I was there 20 years earlier or 20 years later when we could be in the next thing. To see something you love dying in front of you, to not be able to stop it, it's a humbling experience.
It's a good word. How come I might cut this out depending on how come you're not on social media that much?
I used to be. When Twitter first started, I was all over it, but I never ever made comments. All I did was tweet out interesting links, because I was always doing, just reading stuff on the net for Planet America and just in general, just all the TV shows I made. I do my own research, so I was always doing heaps of research. I come across lots of interesting stuff, and so I made a point of sending out 4 or 5 links a day that were my favorite links to interesting things. Essentially, like, I was like, my social media account was essentially QI. Right? I never made jokes. I never commented on anything or expressed opinions. Yeah. And then after about 6 years of that, I got extremely busy, and I just didn't have the time to do the research anymore. And so I'd still tweet things as I saw them. And then after a while, my Twitter account got hacked, and it took me ages to get it back. And it just created a bit of a break in the continuum, which I just never got back on the horse. Also, over time, I think Twitter has become less like it used to be. I'm not talking about Elon Musk. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about well before Elon Musk. I'm talking about when Twitter first started, what I was doing wasn't strange. It wasn't odd to have someone just tweet out interesting stuff. Lots of people did that. It was just sharing interesting things. I really liked that. But over time, it became more about opinions and about people chasing clout and people just promoting themselves, and it became about the people themselves. I didn't want it to be about me. No one cares what I think. I don't want to express my opinions about stuff. Like, I'm just some rando on fucking TV. And get your own opinion. You know, there's this assumption in so much social media that people care, that you are special and people care about you because you've got such interesting things to share. And you don't. You just don't. I don't. You don't. No one does. Like, you're performing a service, essentially. Everyone is their own broadcaster on Twitter. You're performing a service. What's your service? Okay, now my service used to be interesting links, and I wouldn't mind doing that again because I liked providing that service. If you're an expert, you can provide expertise. If you're an actual comedian who can write funny things, sure, write funny things. But if you're just some rando, don't pretend you're something else to promote yourself. Anyway, that's my attitude with social media. It's just people trying to promote themselves for no reason whatsoever, really, just for ego. And it just got me down a bit. And so I like it, and also just the aggression and whenever you put yourself out there, someone's going to criticize it, and that's fine. I don't mind that. Like I said, I'm happy with criticism, but you better put out something that you are prepared to be criticized, because it's going to be criticized, at least in my case. And so when I put out something someone criticizes, I go, well, why did I put that out for? Like, why did I put that thing out? Is there a reason I put that out? No. Well, why did I do it? Like, if there's a reason, sure. If it's something you think should be out there, then great. And then stand behind it. But if you're just being self-indulgent, what's the point? So that's the reason that I'm not into social media. I'm not sound like I'm a social media hater. I'm not. It provides people with opportunities to connect that nothing else does. And I think that's great. I love that the one thing I do in social media is respond to people who send me comments about my show. I like being accessible. I love the accessibility of social media. If you go to the Facebook page of Planet America, I get into arguments all the time with people who are critics, and they're fun. They're positive spirited arguments. They're like, we share a love of American politics, and we have a debate like you would in the pub. That's great. I love that. Like that's good social media. Yep. So I do that. But all the other stuff about just stroking your dick, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry if that offends people, but that's just that's my attitude to it all.
That's very interesting. Just one thing that just sprung to mind, and I'll go back to rapid fire. For people that can watch your new show, you mentioned that it's not because ABC is typically associated with being left-leaning. Is your show politically biased?
We don't really do politics on the show. Like there is, look, someone might ask a political question, and we may think it's a good question to answer, but honestly, I'm biased against doing politics questions. I'm sick of that. I just think there's too much of that shit. I want to make a show that unites people. There's too much you're this or you're that. And there's a lot of that on social media as well, which I don't like. I don't like people being reduced to 160 characters. Like that, people are more than that. And I don't like taking sides in wars, whether they're culture wars or other wars. I don't like that. So that's such a small part of life, and people will make it all of life. And so I want this show to not be like that. So like I want to deal with all the other stuff. So yeah, I'm not saying we won't answer a question that's relevant to that. We've got one or two I can think of. Like we've got to do on gas stoves. Gas stoves is in the culture war, but but trying to generally stay away from that stuff. So the truth is, most of the reporters on the show are left-leaning, but it's pretty much never relevant. Me personally, if you watch Planet America, which I don't assume that you would personally, but for people who watch Planet America, they would know that my personal politics is actually not left at all. I'm not really right either. I'm kind of a libertarian that kind of leans slightly. I'm not centrist, but I'm kind of a libertarian that kind of leans left economically and is more kind of libertarian socially. Like that's kind of my personal politics. So it's not really Labor or liberal. It makes it easy for me to critique Democrats and Republicans because I'm neither really.
I like that.
But I'm not selling that. I'm just saying that as a general fact, I'm probably the most conservative person on the ABC, and I'm not conservative.
You answered it really well because it sounds like we share very similar opinions. Just to watch a show and it's not there for the political side. I think a lot of people will really agree. There's a lot of other stuff. You also do political stuff, but being able to tune into a show like that, yes, there might be the odd question, but I think it works massively in your favor to be able to say like, we're not labels, we're not any of these things. We're all people. There are a lot of other questions which can define us to a degree. I think that works massively in your favor.
Yeah, I think people are sick of the preaching and from all sides, and I think they're sick of the anger and they're sick of the division. I think people are sick of all those things, and we all wish we could move past it, but unfortunately, we all keep on getting sucked into it. And so I'd like to be part of the process of moving past it.
Yeah, very well said. I appreciate that times 100. Last two questions before we go. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
I'd say that my main advice is if you're scared about something, then prepare for it. You can always prepare, but the bottom line is there will be a moment when you need to make a choice. And you need to make a choice, I am going to do this or I am not going to do this. That moment will come at some point in time if you're scared of what you're thinking about doing. People often will procrastinate to put that moment off as far as they possibly can, but it's going to come at some point in time. And when it comes, you always have the ability to switch yourself off. And this is something I've done so often. You always have the ability to go, you know what? I might crash and burn, but I'm doing it. And you just tell that part of your head, shut the fuck up, I'm doing it. No, you can nag, but I'm doing it. It's just a fact. Like that I described before, the kid who says no. You just, in this case, your fears are your parents and you are the kid telling those fears, no. I hear you, I understand you, you might be right. this might be a terrible mistake, but I'm doing it. And then you do it. Your body just takes the step. And like you just almost dissociate yourself. You almost take your brain out of your body and just sit there and watch your body making this potentially horrible mistake. You just do it. Like you can always do that. You think you can't, you can. You really can. It just takes you to tell yourself, you have no control anymore. My body is going to do this thing. Like it's about giving your body the agency to do what your brain won't let it do. And then just do it. Like it's, that is what I would say is what you're going to have to do that at some point in time. So just be ready to do it.
Great advice. Before I ask how people can check out your socials for the ones that you do use, what is the one question I should have asked you?
That's a great one. I would say the most interesting thing about me at this point in time, I mean, there's so many things. I've lived a pretty wild life, so there are so many things we could talk about. The manifestation of me that exists right now, the most interesting thing you could ask me is, how do you avoid not political bias, but general bias on when you're doing the news programming?
Yeah,
because I do news programming, and bias is a real issue generally.
Yeah.
As you hinted at. And I already told you that I'm not really left or right, so that works out well for me. But there's still other forms of bias that aren't political bias. So how do you minimize that? Is probably the most interesting thing about me at this point in time, I would say.
How would you answer that?
Okay. What I would say is that I have a general theory about news consumption. And that is that it's impossible to avoid your personal perspective. You can't get away from that. But what you can do is you can create as many different inputs as possible so that you have as much information as you possibly can, so it minimizes the effect of your personal perspective. And then it takes some restraint as well to not inject your opinion when it doesn't need to be there. If you watch our show, you'll know that I will often not say what my opinion is at all. I will talk about an issue. I'll say the things that objectively are wrong in various arguments, like they're just factually wrong. And then I'll say, and someone's going to do this and someone's going to try this. I'll make a prediction of what I think might happen. And then what that means, if that happens, then this might happen. We'll see. I end up with so many segments. And I finish so many segments with the phrases, so we'll see. Because when I'm doing that, that means I'm not expressing an opinion.
Yeah, I love
intentionally. That. But that's not the key bit. The key bit is, how do you get that information? This is what's interesting. My theory is this, that because everyone has a bias, any piece of information that you absorb is biased. And there's no way you can get around that. Even if it's the World Fact Book, it has a bias in the stats that it thinks are relevant, right? There is a bias, not necessarily political, but there's a socioeconomic bias, or there's a bias in how you think, what information you think is relevant or important, or there's a bias in what you think is sufficient evidence to make your case. In an article, they might use quotes, they might use stats. Where do they get their stats from? All these questions are choices. All of those choices are informed by their perspective, which has a bias, right? So whatever information source you use, there is a bias. So this is how I try and minimize it, the effect of it. What I do is I make a point of reading as many different good faith takes from biased people as I possibly can.
Interesting.
Getting as many different biased takes as I possibly can. When I say biased, everyone's biased, but when I know what the bias is, I want to know the bias, right? And then I will just imagine each of them is a snapshot, and it's coming from a certain angle, and I know what the angle is. And then I can take all those 2D pictures, and in my head, if I have enough of them, I can assemble a 3D picture in my head, knowing the angle they're coming from and what that 2D picture says. And then in my head, I can assemble something approaching a 3D image of the story. And then I then use my perspective to try and evaluate what I think is the most important parts of that story, and that's what I bring. And that's the bias that I have, my judgment calls on what those things are, what those important aspects are, and how you illustrate those particular things. But at least I'm staying with a 3D picture. So I make a point of reading ridiculous amounts, way more than I need. Like I will read, for Planet America, I will read something in the order of 200 articles a day. All right. And I make very extensive notes. I have thousands of pages of notes per season of Planet America, where I take heaps and heaps of notes, and I have all the links of all the different bits of evidence and stuff. And then at the end of the week, I read again my notes, and I try and assemble this picture of the story that I'm talking about. And that is how I try to get the total information that I can then minimize the effect of my perspective on when I bring it to the people. I'm not saying I have no perspective, I'm not saying I have no bias, but that is the way I try to be as useful as possible to someone who has a different perspective from me. And so I hope that when they see what I've got, they know I've got my own bias, but they still think, well, that was useful because I've got so many inputs into what I'm outputting that I've assembled it in that particular way. That is, I think, my original means of interpreting news. I don't think anyone else has ever thought of or done that I know of.
No, that's so unique.
And if they have, they haven't talked about it, I've seen. And that is my key to trying to get through this period of extreme insecurity, change, and distrust in news.
That is a very refreshing take to, I love it. I could speak about that for ages. I think, you're trying your best to try and present the news as factual. You don't see that on all of the news in general. We're on the same page. I appreciate that you do that. Before we go, I know, we've spoken about your show. How can people let you know that they like the show or keep in contact and all that stuff?
Yeah. Look, I am sporadic on Twitter, but now our show's on air. I'm there. I'm going to be there a lot more. You can always message me on my Twitter is CHASLICC, Chaslich. I've also got a Planet America Twitter account, which is CHAS _USA, Chas _USA. I look at them all the time, the messages, and I respond. So if you have a question, or you have, I don't mean a question for the show. If you have a question for the show, great. But I just think just if you're curious about something to do with me or the show, whatever, just ask. If you got some feedback you want to give me, I'll read it and I'll consider it. Trust me, I'll consider it. Doesn't mean I'm gonna agree with you, but I'm gonna take it on board. You can always contact me that way. And also I man the social pages of Planet America as well. The Facebook page of Planet America. Planet America has I've got a podcast, PEP, which is Planet Extra podcast with Chaz and Dave, which is on YouTube, and it's on podcast, which is just a super nerdy podcast about American politics, which I also will, when people send questions or talk to, I look at them all the time. I look at them every day, so I'll respond to that as well. So you can get in touch with me all the time through those methods.
Thank you. I will have all of those in the episode notes so people can check it out. Thank you so much. This is the longest podcast we've done, and that's a credit to you because you are super empowering, you're uplifting, and very thoughtful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved it. I love talking about myself.
I love Chaz's stance on being part of the solution. Unfortunately, too often in society, we can judge and attack others for differing values and beliefs. However, what we can fail to do is realize that more times than not, we have far more in common than the things that separate us. Chaz talks about uniting us and not dividing us, looking for the common links that make humans a fantastic and unique species. As he says, there's too much this or that. He doesn't like us reducing anyone to just names and labels, and thus overlooking ourselves as a human. My takeaway is that the best way to change our interactions with others is to focus on their humanity, our common ground, our differences too, as well as our shared loves. This is how we have a conscious impact and have far more positive interactions rather than just highlighting our differences. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we focused on acceptance and unity? So I'll leave you with this epic quote. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. Audre Lorde.
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.